This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1724, the CGS Best of 2018 Awards Nominations Show. I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Chris Eberly.
And I'm Ian Levinstein.
Fantastique.
Yes.
Welcome, everyone, to a night of revelations, laughs, thrills, excitement, as we run down not only our own geek picks for the best in comics of the year 2018 in terms of series, characters, creators, etc., but also the best in terms of what you, the listeners, have told us. And we put out the call for nominations some weeks ago, and you, the listeners, answered the call. I've collected and collated the results, and those results will be revealed on this episode that you are about to hear.
Most magnificent. Excellent. Murd, as always, thank you for helming this concept.
It was a pleasure, Chris.
Splendid. Ian, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. Glad that we didn't get hit nearly as bad with the snow as some people were forecasting. I know you guys got it a little worse than I did.
Well, it got me out of school early, so I'm not complaining.
Here.
Yes, and I'm nice and cozy up in my office on the second floor of the Christmas barn, so no snow can touch me here. I'm ready to just talk some comics with some friends and just reminisce about interesting year of comics fandom that is now behind us.
And the image of Murd in a cozy situation is just magnificent. Dare I say even legendary. Outstanding, sir.
Now, before we get into the formal nominations, I just wanted to extend a thank you to Mr. Eberly for having us in your home base this last weekend. It was good times all around, and the winter retreat went swimmingly.
Hear, hear.
Gentlemen, it was my pleasure, and certainly my wife Keiko's pleasure. She prepared the food. Yeah, we look forward to that every year, and it was a great assemblage this year. Ian, it was wonderful to have you for the first time.
My pleasure.
And it's moments like that just remind me how lucky I am when it comes to friends. And as we all know, the drudgery of sometimes the daily life, you can lose sight of that, and I get to talk to people as much as you'd like. So these kinds of gatherings are absolutely vital. So thank you both for coming.
There was some first-rate fellowship being exchanged that night. I do feel lucky to have been a part of it myself, Chris. So thanks for making it possible.
You bet, gentlemen.
All right.
Murd, let's dive in.
All right, folks. So we've got 16 categories to get through here. You'll be hearing nominations from myself and Chris and Ian, and also the winners of the listener voting in each of these 16 categories. And the first will be the best new hero or hero team to have made their debut in comics in the year 2018. And we are talking about things that, in the case of Big 2 releases, were released in comics cover dated March 2018 through February of 2019. Other smaller publishers don't seem to do that advanced dating thing anymore, but with Marvel and DC, that's a rule of thumb. Chris, I'm going to accord the honor of laying down the first nomination to you, sir.
Murd, I feel like I've just been knighted, man.
Mantle has been bestowed.
Thanks, bro. All right, my new hero is from Black Hammer number 7, The Age of Doom, Inspector Insector.
Outstanding. All right. My best new hero or team, Dragonfly/Dragonfly Man, Ahoy Comics.
And there was mine also. But I come prepared with a backup, however. My nominee for Best New Hero is going to be, instead of Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, Pamela Evans, the protagonist of Joe Casey's MCM LXXV.
Ooh. Great pick.
And we'll hear from the listeners once we've all said our piece.
Yeah, so we'll just in case people are new to this format, so each of us will give like a quick, blurb about why we chose our particular nominee. So for me, I've raved on the air many times about how I consider Black Hammer probably the best superhero comic coming out today. Just quickly, it's Jeff Lemire, sort of his take on Golden Age concepts, but very much with a dark twist to it. And this particular issue, where Inspector Insector appears, is one of the main members of the team. That's I don't want to ruin the whole story, but basically, the character Colonel Weird ends up in sort of a pocket universe where there's all these comic book characters that almost were created. So they're kind of in this purgatory of semi-creation. And the book kind of pierces the fourth wall. It talks, at one point you even see them like trying to get out of like the mind of the creator of these potential concepts. And Inspector Insector is a sort of like a Dick Tracy type gumshoe who is transformed into this insectoid creature, anthropomorphic, and he's one of the leading characters in sort of this quest Colonel Weird's a part of. And it was just a great concept. I mean, all the characters because they have a series of semi-creations, and they're all fun archetypes or sort of spins on classic comic superheroic archetypes. But he was the character that sort of lasted the longest in the story, and just the voice they gave him, it was just like, wow, what if Sam Spade turned into a bug? So it's immensely fun, and just another quick example of why Black Hammer is, for me, one of the most innovative superhero comics being produced today. So that's my nominee.
Yes, and it is a name for the ages.
But Black Hammer really does sound like like an old school title in all the right ways. Like it rolls off the tongue and you just want to scream it.
Have you read it, Ian?
I have not. No, I've heard you wax poetic about it many times on the show. I just haven't gotten to it yet on my large pile of stuff. But I'm hoping maybe Free Comic Book Day. I may try to pick up the first volume at discount if Jim Hanley's is having one of their big sales like they normally do.
Well, I look forward to your reaction, brother.
All right.
Yep. Ian, it's a fantastic meditation on a lot of the classic conventions and archetypes of superhero comics, and it's well worth your time. I think you'll like it.
All right. So sort of like a Morrisonian style breakdown, or just more in vein of old school comics with a little bit of a twist?
A little more in the vein of old school comics.
Okay.
It's more conventional, more intelligible storytelling. The narrative is more focused.
Well, speaking of narratives that are well focused, Dragonfly / Dragonfly Man out of Ahoy Comics, The Wrong Earth. To me, I had to put it somewhere on my list, and I feel that this was probably the best way to put it, because this is easily my favorite new character / characters of the year. Period. What they're crafting here is very much a Batman 60s meets Batman 90s sort of scenario, where like the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Dragonfly Man winds up in the wrong universe, and winds up in the universe of the 1990s gritty. Everything has gone wrong for me, and I have to take to the streets Punisher style way of being a hero like Dragonfly is. And while Dragonfly winds up in the Adam West-esque, Batman universe of Dragonfly Man, and they have to get around in both and survive. Both of these characters are so well put together and so distinct and unique, even though they are essentially the same person. Because it just really says just how different situations and different scenarios can cause someone to turn out so very differently. That's very much what we have here. You can even consider, Dragonfly in some ways could have easily been my best new villain, but I chose not to, just because I'd say he falls more into the category of a Punisher-esque hero, sort of towing the line of both vigilante style. I loved every little bit of this first edition of The Wrong Earth, and I cannot wait to get more. I know that there's going to be a Free Comic Book Day issue coming out that's going to tell some stories in their respective universes before the Wrong Earth happens, and then we'll get more of season 2 in, I believe, next year. As I mentioned on previews, Jamal's going to be working on the sequel series to Black, which is titled White. That's going to be coming out shortly. So he's currently devoted to that. They didn't want to go with a different artist. But Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, had to put them on my list. There was no way around it.
And I felt much the same way you did, Ian, when I put Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man on my list.
Great minds.
Yeah, it's it. Right. We're on the same wavelength, just different parallel Earths, apparently. Yes, sympathetic vibrations and all that. Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man are just... It's fascinating to see how these two characters... And let's not forget the additional wrinkle that their archenemy, the Joker analog, number 1.
Yes.
The egotist of evil, who's sort of a self-absorption themed master criminal. Those two, it's actually the egotist's magic mirror that allow the two to stumble into each other's universes. Mm-hmm. And so they exchange versions of number 1 as well, although the dark, gritty version of number 1 fares a little bit better than his Adam West-like analog. But it's fascinating to see not only how these two versions of the same character adapt to the rules and conventions and just sort of the moral background radiation. I'm thinking of the way Grant Morrison set up the difference between the DC Universe Earth and the Antimatter Earth in his JLA Earth 2 graphic novel a while ago, where the Antimatter Earth, where the crime syndicate dwelt, or a version of the crime syndicate anyway. It was set up in such a way that evil always won on that Earth. It was just the nature of that universe, whereas in the mainstream DC universe, of course, good tended to prevail. It's just kind of interesting seeing how these two characters kind of slowly become affected by the worlds in which they're forced to operate now.
Yeah.
And also the way that those worlds and their respective supporting casts and villains and so forth react to these very different versions of their familiar local champion. It's all very well thought out and scripted by Tom Peyer. And, of course, our mutual friend Jamal Igle, his artwork is just choice. So, yep. But all of that is neither here nor there because Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man have been represented in the nominations by Ian. And fortunately, I had a backup ready to go, another series that I really wanted to give some love to as we go through here in our nominations process. And it's a series put out through Image recently, written by Joe Casey. And it's entitled MCMLXXV, which is Roman numerals for 1975, which is, of course, the year in which the story takes place. And it's kind of a supernatural horror street fighting story in a 70s blaxploitation vein. And yes, it is enjoyable, Chris. The lead character, and she is the nominee that I'm touting here, is Pamela Evans. And she is a tough-as-nails New York cabbie. She lives in Harlem. She's like the most no-nonsense employee of the taxi office for which she works. And her boss, her dispatcher, is this Oberon-like little dwarf, I think was inspired equally by Louis De Palma of Taxi fame, as by the aforementioned Kirby creation. So she drives her hack around New York City, but eventually, as this story opens, supernatural beings start slinking through cracks in the dimensional walls between our world and the next. And Pamela Evans, we're told in a series of flashbacks detailing her childhood, spent some time as an unwilling resident of this other dimension. She was abducted there as a child, and she basically grew up fighting for survival against these horrible, nightmarish Lovecraftian horrors that dwelt there, with nothing more than her wits, her desire to survive, her internal grit, and an enchanted tire iron to protect her. And so flash forward to New York City, 1975, and she finds herself in that position once again, but now the horrors are meeting her on her own turf, and they don't have a chance. And she's really an interesting... Just as fun to read character. She has a boyfriend who's like a local late night radio DJ. The interactions between them and the way that he, as he's doing his sort of, Closest thing I have to compare it to is Venus Rising on WKRP in Cincinnati. It was a late-night soul show, which acts as kind of a narration for Pamela's adventures. So the series, I think, was only three issues, or at least only 3 issues have been published to date. But it's a very enjoyable genre adventure for fans of 1970s film and comics. If you're a fan of the 1979 film The Warriors, this is basically that, but with a strong black female protagonist and also lots of other dimensional demon monsters. So I do recommend the series, and I'm happy to put up its main character, Pamela Evans, as my best new hero of the year 2018.
And Mert, I'm more excited now because I actually have that book. I haven't read it yet. So I was so intrigued by the concept. As you know, I'm a big blaxploitation fan, and now you've just sealed the deal with your recommendation, so I can't wait to read it.
You're in for a treat, my friend.
Splendid.
You 100% sold me with the words "like the Warriors" because that is one of my favorite bad movies to watch because it's so tongue in cheek and so over the top. I love it in so many ways, and very few movies encapsulate 1970s New York in such beautiful fashion like The Warriors, while at the same time still being utterly ridiculous.
And I'm ashamed to say I have yet to see The Warriors, which is a terrible deficiency on my part. I know it's a cult classic. It's Walter Hill. I always love all of his movies usually. So I got to put that right on the top of my list. And speaking of bad movies that are glorious, just quickly, Murd, I watched Zardoz a few days ago.
You did?
And we have to discuss that at a future time.
Was I right that it's not as bad as you perhaps had heard it was?
And another time we have more when we're not doing a nomination, we'll talk about that at length because that demands a lengthier discussion. Let's just say I found it glorious in its own particular way.
All right.
So
happy to hear you enjoyed it, Chris. I'm sure that'll be a fine discussion.
Indeed.
One thing you'll notice, Chris, when you do eventually watch The Warriors is that the radio personality that's heard throughout is also the chief from Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right, Lynn Thigpen.
Yes.
He just pulls that name out of the ether.
Beautiful.
All right, Murray, what's the listener's choice?
All right. From the listeners, we actually have a tie for their favorite character or team. It's actually one team and one solo character who's a member of a team. It's DC's The Terrifics, which is the DC Comics pastiche of the Fantastic Four, consisting of Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho, Plastic Man, and a version of Phantom Girl, who were unleashed under the DC universe by Jeff Lemire and friends during this year. And tied with them is a Marvel character, Snowguard, who is a member of the current incarnation of the Champions team. I had not been aware this character existed, but I'm very happy that she does. She's basically Snowbird of Alpha Flight Redux. Yep, she was created by Jim Zub, who is the writer of the Champions right now, to be a less ethnocentric manifestation of the idea of Snowbird. You know, instead of just being a Caucasian woman acting as the avatar of the Arctic North America, she's actually an Inuit teenager who grew up on Baffin Island, and through a series of circumstances gained powers that are very similar to those wielded by Snowbird of Alpha Flight.
Oh.
So that's the listeners' choices. So to review, for New Hero Team, the nominees will be Inspector Insector of Black Hammer, Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man of The Wrong Earth, Pamela Evans of MCM LXXV, The Terrifics, and Snowguard from The Champions.
All right.
All right, so round 2, Best New Villain or Team to make their first appearance in 2018. Ian, it's your turn to go first, so take her away.
Alrighty. My best new villain or villain team of 2018 would be the Griever from Fantastic Four.
Mine will be the Citizen from Green Arrow.
Oh. All right, mine is I'm having a little fun here. It's kind of a twist, but my new villain is Namor the Submariner.
Ooh.
And I'll explain when my time comes.
Well done. If anybody has ever listened to a word come out of my mouth, they know that I love the multiverse, and I absolutely love anything having to do with the multiverse, especially creating new worlds. And that's what's been going on in Dan Slott's Fantastic Four series since it relaunched about midway through 2018. The main villain that was introduced, which then brings the Fantastic Four together, would be the Griever. I believe her full name is Griever at the End of All Things. She's a cosmic entity along the same lines of some of the other cosmic entities of the Marvel Universe. Now, of course, I'm blanking on the name, but the one that's made up almost entirely of stars.
Eternity.
Thank you.
Eternity.
Thank you.
Wait. Eternity. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And the Griever is supposed to be along those same lines. She was witness to the last light fade from the edge of eternity and grieve for everything that ever was and was ever meant to be. She sees Reed Richards and specifically Franklin Richards creating all of these new worlds to replace the multiverse that was destroyed at the end of Secret Wars. And she sees it as an affront. And rather than allow them to continue to build, her entire existence is to destroy, like almost an even further cosmic level version of Galactus in that way.
Galactus.
She transports the Fantastic Four onto this empty end of the multiverse, and that's when Reed first calls together everyone to try and defeat her and bring the team back together. And by team, I mean literally everybody who's ever been a member of the Fantastic Four. It's a joyous sight to see.
Yes, it is.
And it was an excellent battle. And I love the character design on Griever. Almost goth in appearance. Reminds me also slightly of the design on the Ultimate Reed Richards, the Ultimate Mr. Fantastic that they once he went evil. Has a very similar style helmet. But she's also got these minions, these headless minions with just giant gaping mouths with large, sharp fang claws on the sides of their mouths that are really freaking me out, even just looking at them now. And this is not the last we've seen of the Griever, definitely, because she's still out there somewhere, and the Future Foundation is currently trying to search and destroy her, or at least come to some sort of understanding as to exactly what she is and why she is. So I am intrigued, and I want to see more of her, and that is why the Griever is my choice.
All right. Mert?
Always happy to see a new member of Marvel's Cosmic Pantheon introduced.
Yes.
Leave it to Dan Slott. Okay, so my villain selection, this is for the second year in a row, I'm nominating a Julie Benson and Shauna Benson created character as a best new villain of the year. I went with their Blackbird from Batgirl and the Birds of Prey last year. The Citizen is an opponent that they crafted specifically to drive their tragically abbreviated run on the Green Arrow series. It's a character that they created not only to reflect the spirit of these times, but also to key into a certain aspect of Oliver Queen's character. So the Citizen is a masked vigilante slash social justice warrior, you might call him, to coin a phrase. And he takes to social media to avenge perceived wrongs against the 99% of society by privileged rich fat cats of the 1%, one of which, it should be noted, because goodness knows the Citizen notes it, Oliver Queen happens to be. So Oliver Queen, with Black Canary assisting him every step of the way, races against time to catch this citizen as he captures various offending 1%ers and puts them to death on the internet. While first inviting his growing group of social media followers to vote on these 1%ers' fates, knowing all the while that Oliver Queen is pretty soon going to be at the top of the Citizen's hit list. So there is a certain amount of suspense going on there. Now, the Citizen in and of itself is well, not that exceptional a character. It's a masked vigilante, but it's the way that Julie and Shauna use this character, the way that they tailor him, well, to contemporary values and issues, but also to the specifics of Oliver Queen, is very well done. It reminds me a little bit. I think they're drawing for inspiration on like the early days of Ollie's social relevance based from the very early 70s. As a matter of fact, just to drive that point home, the first victim of the Citizen is Jubal Slade, who is, longtime readers may remember, the name. He's the post-Flashpoint version of the crooked slumlord that Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen take down in Green Lantern and Green Arrow number 76 from all the way back in 1970.
Oh, deep cut. Fantastic.
Oh, yes, all the credit there goes to Julie and Shauna, because they know their DC history well enough.
Hell yeah.
And so they just start the Citizen off on that foot. And so the Citizen acts as a great commentary on kind of the dark side of the quest for social justice and the abuse of social media, and how Oliver Queen is able to balance his role as one of the privileged wealthy in the United States here in the 21st century with his own personal quest for social justice. There's a certain flip side of the coin aspect to the Citizen and his own agenda and his own methods, as opposed to how Oliver pursues roughly the same goals. One difference being he doesn't use lethal force, and he doesn't take to social media to self-aggrandize. So yeah, that's well done, Julie and Shauna. I'm sorry that they had to make an exit from comics a little while ago. They weren't on that book as long as they might have liked, and now they're focusing on other things. And I know it's tough, but they like to keep moving forward. You almost have to when you're working in entertainment media. And I'm sorry that they're not producing any more comics at the moment, but I look forward to when they make their triumphant return, hopefully with some creator-owned concept of theirs. And I'm just happy to be able to give them one final nod of recognition here on this most recent foray of theirs into writing for the major comics publishers. So I acknowledge their villain, the Citizen, as my nominee.
Well, Murd, you really whetted my appetite there, because I have not read that particular run, but I applaud them crafting a story around two of the most pressing issues of our time, which is, the politics around income inequality and the impact of social media on our politics, our society, everything. So I'm really intrigued now to read that story. So excellent. All right. Okay, so I was struggling a bit with this category because I've thought about all the different comics I read this year, and I never read as many as I'd like, but I read a fair amount. But I couldn't think of any new villains that I was exposed to that stuck in my left an imprint on my memory. And then I thought, wait a minute. I went back to the Avengers and Jason Aaron's, so far triumphant run on that title. And I thought about how he's now using Namor. And I tied it into the spotlight Murd and I did a few months back on the Submariner. And Aaron is brought back the wrathful Submariner who is enraged at the surface world and is in the midst of waging war against the surface world again. And just go to what's going on in the Avengers right now to catch up on that. But he introduces us to this sort of new/old version of Namor when Namor brutally attacks Stingray, including using a school of sharks in that attack, and it's quite brutal. And there's a confrontation with the Avengers and Steve Rogers and so forth. But what I found almost giddily refreshing in a dark way was that he's taken us back to the Submariner, who's a very much a dark, ambiguous figure, and in many ways a villainous figure. And I'm really pleased because it looks like Marvel's going to do a lot with the Submariner this year. I mean, after all, the character did appear in 1939. So what are we now? 80th anniversary, right? Am I correct in saying that?
You absolutely are.
Yep.
Of the character. And on a future episode, I'm going to rave about the Chip Zdarsky written New Invaders. And the Submariner is playing a key role in that. So I'm pleased to see they're using the character quite a bit now. And in many ways, they're using him in a more villainous way. Granted that there's nuance and complexity to why Namor's doing what he's doing, but it's refreshing in a very dark way to see the character being applied, and again in this very wrathful sense. So whereas last year I said, Deathstroke was my new hero because, Christopher Priest doing something new with that character at that time, I like what Jason Aaron's doing with Namor. So he's going to, at least for now, he's going to be, my new villain.
Flip it and reverse it.
Indeed.
How many times has he said Imperious Rex so far?
I don't know if he said it at all yet. I'd have to go back to those issues.
All right.
But if either I'm forgetting that, or if he has it, I'm sure he will at some point.
He's probably saving it for just the right moment.
Indeed. All right, Murd.
Okay, and the listeners have chosen as their nominee for Best New Villain, the Red Cloud, introduced by Brian Michael Bendis as a mystery villain in his Superman comics.
Okay.
Notable runner-ups for the listeners include The Venetian from Mark Miller's The Magic Order, and from the world of Black Hammer, Thu Louise.
Ha! Good one. I was reading, just to refresh my memory, I was reading some best of 2018 lists, from various sites on the net. And boy, Bendis' Superman is getting a lot of love. And I haven't read any of it yet, so I'm further intrigued to really dive into it when I get a chance.
Yeah, I'm just getting into it now. I think I mentioned on a previous show that I was reading the Man of Steel miniseries, and once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go whole hog and try to catch myself up on that before I catch up on like 3 years worth of back issues for both that book and Batman that I still haven't read. But at least I'll be up to date.
What a beautiful, beautiful dream.
Yeah, right.
Oh, Murd, the yearning in your voice just then gave me chills.
But I should see it again within my lifetime. But dreams for another day.
Believe in yourself.
All right, so to review then, the best new villain or villain team nominees are from Chris, Namor the Submariner, from Ian, the Griever at the End of All Things, from me, the Citizen, and from the listeners, the Red Cloud. All right, which brings us now to the best new comic, this being a new ongoing series, the first issue of which shall have shipped in 2018. Okay, and my choice in this category will be something that we reviewed as a kind of unofficial off-the-racks pick, The Green Lantern.
Nice. Oh. Well played. So you're going to find a lot of Marvel on my list just because I've been going through a lot of my Marvel Unlimited backlog lately, but Immortal Hulk.
Oh, Ian, I got to tell you, that's a book I want to start reading because I've heard rave reviews for this book.
Oh, you're going to hear a lot more in a few minutes.
Okay, because from some of the stuff I've been reading, some people are saying it's some of the best Hulk ever done.
Yeah.
So I look forward to your testifying to that. My selection is by two of my favorite creators, the Dream Team of David Walker and illustrator Sanford Green, and also co-written by Chuck Brown, Bitter Root.
Oh, wow. All right. Okay, so the Green Lantern, we talked about this at some length during the aforementioned, I think that was during the Cornucopia of Comics conversation, actually, our Thanksgiving get-together.
Yep.
And that series has continued to impress me in the few issues that have been released since then. I mean, it's Grant Morrison doing what I see as a 2000 AD take on Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, and the world of the Green Lantern Corps. It's not too bogged down by recent continuity, though it doesn't completely flagrantly ignore it. It's got a good sense of DC Comics history. It's got a wry, quirky sense of humor that ties it back to the British humor-tinged sci-fi that is often found in 2000 AD. The art of Liam Sharp is sharp, and it reminds me of It reminds me of Alan Davis at times, which is about the highest compliment I can give to comics sequential art. It's got some sense of intrigue. There are a number of cool mysteries that Morrison is pursuing or has foreshadowed, many of which draw on previously existing comics concepts. There's some kind of mysterious homuncular super weapon being built within I think it's the antimatter universe of Quard, but it's using components from various Green Lantern foes or taken from dark places in the Green Lantern's jurisdiction. So they've the longtime Green Lantern villain Evil Star has met with a sticky end. I mean, he's not technically dead, but he's not at all well. So interesting things going on there in the life of Hal Jordan. It's all fairly comprehensible. It's Grant Morrison using that fearsome imagination of his without going too far off the deep end. He's utilizing a little bit of self-control. He's telling a fun intergalactic police procedural story with some quality humor and lots of classic science fiction flavoring. It's a comic that I'm excited to pick up every month, and I can't say that about 75% of what's being published these days. So I'm happy to make that my nod for best new comic.
All right. Ian?
Okay, so pretty much every single thing that you've heard about Immortal Hulk is right. What I love about this concept is that it's turned the Hulk back into a monster, but in such a unique and simple way.
So it goes back to the roots of the character then, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
The main difference being, rather than being, Hulk smash puny humans, this is a Hulk that very much has a distinct personality and intelligence.
Love it.
And you're not entirely sure whether or not Banner is there when the Hulk is there. But the only time Hulk comes out is at night.
Oh, this goes back to the first issue then. Wow.
Yes.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yep. So we're going way back to its origins. And this is a Banner that isn't even sure how or why he's alive exactly, because after the events,
the Hawkeye arrow.
Yes, the Hawkeye arrow and everything, he came back, but he's not even sure how much of him is really there. Whether or not it's all of him and all of the Hulk, or all of the Hulk and only part of him, or part of both of them, it's very hard to tell. But what I really appreciate about this more than anything else is that it even has elements of like the 70s TV show, because you see that Banner is moving from town to town, meeting new people and experiencing new things, and the Hulk comes out, and then next issue he's moved on to somewhere else, and something else is happening. But you also get the idea that this is all going to tie together as the series moves forward. I've only read up to the 5 issues in, because that's what's currently on Unlimited, but I zoomed through those 5 issues, and best of all, who shows up in the 5th issue but Sasquatch?
Oh,
that is pretty good.
Yeah, I've always been a Sasquatch fan, and this take on the character is one that I've also never really seen before. Remembering the fact that Sasquatch, or I don't know whether this is retro or not, to include him this way, but he's very much tied in with the Hulk in the way he obtained his powers through gamma radiation. But he's also got that whole demon spirit thing going on. So,
is the Sasquatch still Dr. Walter Langowski?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't for a while.
That's what I thought. All right.
Yeah. So this particular version is Langowski, but also there's some not hard to explain things about Langowski as well, because he supposedly died, and yet here he is walking around. So we've got some very interesting mysteries and unique takes on characters that have been around for so many years, and I love seeing unique takes that still remember the original character. Beautiful. And Al Ewing, pretty much anything he writes at this point now, I'm going to read. Every single thing that he has done for Marvel Comics has been dynamite. I have to finish the Ultimates series that he was working on a few years ago, with Captain Marvel in the team, and Black Panther and a bunch of others. It was very much cosmic based, and Galactus was a member of that team.
Galactus.
Thank you.
Good grief, it's a running gag.
I can always count on you. So it just everything he's been doing is great, and the art I will also touch on maybe later in this episode. We'll see about that. But it's superb, and it deserves Eisners. Like, no joke. Like, if it does not win awards at the end of this year, it will surprise the hell out of me.
Let me tell you, Ian, because I trust your I trust your taste unreservedly. So I'm sold, because when I was reading reviews, I had no idea how highly lauded this book is.
Yeah.
And I mean, every list I went to, this book was like one or two, literally.
Yep.
And right up there with, like, a lot of these lists they'll go like deep cut, like independent books.
Mm-hmm.
Immortal Hulk was right up there, and I was like, wow, like I had no idea, and I'm going to Marvel Unlimited tomorrow and start reading it, because I'm extremely excited. I haven't read the Hulk in a long time, so this just gets my juices flowing as a catalyst to get back to that character.
And I'll tell you, issue 3 of the series as well has a bevy of artists, and you're telling, you're seeing like one specific story from the eyes of multiple individuals, and they use multiple artists to tell that story. And it's so beautifully weaved and crafted, and you have, I think, maybe like 6 different artists all on one issue, and it actually feels like it should be that way.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Oh, Ian. Ladies and gentlemen, how much do we love Ian Levinstein? I just can't get enough of this guy. Just fantastic.
He's the sensational character find of 2019.
Outstanding.
All right. So for me, I chose Bitterroot. The first issue came out at the end of 2018. And actually, I only read it maybe a week ago, because it was just in my pile of books I've been working through. And I was very excited to order it because – David Walker is one of my favorite writers in comics of the past few years. Everything he's done that I've read, his Shaft adaptations, his Planet of the Apes Ursus miniseries, which was phenomenal, and then what he did when he did Power Man Iron Fist, a series that ended way too soon a couple years back, with the great Sanford Green on pencils, I was totally sold on this creative team. So when I saw they were doing something new, I ordered it without hesitation. And it's wonderful. First of all, I love Sanford Green's style. He's just has such a dynamic art style. It's so distinctive. And this story takes place in the 1920s, in the time of the Harlem Renaissance in Harlem. It's about a family of monster hunters who, over time, their numbers have been culled. That some of them have been killed, fighting monsters. And basically, the monsters they fight are people infected by hate, people infected by the fear of the other. So the story also has a very powerful social commentary attached to it. And they clearly did their homework on just the look and feel of 1920s Harlem. Like, there's a scene where they show people at a party, and the dancing. It's so well done. And Sanford Green has this style. There's almost a bit of like and I don't mean this in a cutesy way, like almost like a Disney aspect to it, where all the characters are they have this almost cartoonish style to them, but not in like a fluffy, it's Snow White type of way. It's just I'm not doing it justice, but I love his style. And this story captivated me right off the bat. I have not read the subsequent issues. I certainly intend to, but it's a story about a family that's been devastated by sort of the mission they've been following for all these generations, and how the surviving members are sort of torn about how they want to continue their mission, how they want to approach it, what methods do they want to use. And I highly recommend that at least the first issue. I'm certainly going to continue reading it once I get the time to follow up on it. But very exciting. And again, this is a creative team in comics that people should be paying more attention to. So Bitterroot's my selection.
I'm very happy to hear the name Sanford Green, just because I remember him. I actually got a chance to interview him back in the day for Comic Timing back in must have been 2008. Right around the time he was doing the Wonder Girl series for DC. And to see how much his art has evolved since then. because his art was great on Wonder Girl, but it's definitely developed its own personal style.
Oh, without question.
How?
And
Like he's an artist where right away I can point out, oh, that's Sanford Green's work.
Oh yeah,
and always, and I mean that very much as a positive. You know, it's like, oh God, I love this guy's work.
Definitely.
So, bravo.
Meanwhile, I managed to offend him by talking down his portrayal of Tombstone.
Bird, you were just giving honest criticism. There's nothing wrong with that.
I wasn't, and I have apologized for having maybe gone a little bit over the line with that. So I hope, Sanford, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I actually have, like Chris, I have supported Bitterroot as well.
Splendid. And the listeners, Bird.
Well, the listeners. Well, I had to scramble a little bit while you guys were talking because. All right, so here's the thing. Well, when Ian said everything that you've heard about Immortal Hulk is true, I had heard nothing about Immortal Hulk.
Wow.
All I knew about it is that it was a series involving Bruce Banner more as the Hulk, with some really neat Alex Ross covers. That's pretty much all I knew about it. Then somehow this torrent of support comes in from the listeners. It's one of the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the biggest runaways in the listener voting.
Wow.
The Immortal Hulk was there. I didn't think there was any chance that either of you would choose that as your nominee. So I kind of had to scramble a little bit to find out what, if anything, would be the runner-up for the listeners. And as it turns out that there is a tie for second place, so both of those series involved in that tie will enter the ballot as the listener's choice after the Immortal Hulk, which was the clear winner. And those two runners-up, which will be on the ballot, are Hawkman and Black Badge by Matt Kint from Boom Studios.
All right.
Well, I'm clearly so far behind in my DC Comics because I didn't even know there was a new Hawkman series. So that's my revelation for today.
Well, there you go. I can back up the listeners because I have been collecting that series for the first arc or two. It's written by Rob Venditti, and it follows up on revelations about the character that came out in during the Dark Knights Metal mega event.
Ah, okay.
Well, anyone who takes on the Hawkman character and concept as a writer deserves the CGS Medal of Valor. So, outstanding.
And it looks like Brian Hitch started off on that series as well. I don't know if he's still on it, but he was doing art for a while. I'm looking at it now.
Yes, he did for a while. I don't think he's doing every single issue. I think he's kind of coming and going.
Right.
But he certainly was a presence during the first few issues.
Very good.
All right, so your nominees for Best New Ongoing Comic of 2018 are Bitterroot, The Immortal Hulk, The Green Lantern, Hawkman, and Black Badge. All right, which brings us on to the Best Limited Series. And then this would be a finite series, the final issue of which shall have been published in 2018. Let's see. I think it's Chris's turn to go first again.
Yeah, this wasn't even a question for me. It's Dr. Star and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows.
Ooh. Not what I was expecting you to say, but a worthy choice.
I love that title. I really haven't read a lot of limited series this year, and it would have been The Wrong Earth had it come out at the end of 2018, but alas, it finished in 2019. So I wound up going with Spider-Geddon.
All right. It was kind of a tough choice for me, too, and since most of the miniseries I've read this year were either crossover related or licensed character, a lot of gimmicky miniseries that didn't really seem to deserve it. But one that I came up with that I thought should have a few laurels applied to it is Plastic Man.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay, so this is a comic that comes out of Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer universe. It's written by Jeff Lemire, and the art is by Max Fiumara. Colors by Dave Stewart. Letter by Nate Piekos. I talked about this a bit in a previous episode. There are moments in my comic reading life where I read a story, be it a single issue, an arc, what have you, that reminds me of why I've, in many ways, have devoted my life to the comic book medium in certain ways, and sort of rejuvenate my faith in that medium. And that's what Dr. Star has done. as a fan of the medium, as also as a father, because this book is very much about father and sons. And this book is also very much loving tribute to the work of James Robinson and Starman. I'm sure Shane would concur if he was on the air with us for this episode.
Ooh, without a doubt.
There are rare moments where this happens to me, but I wept by the end of this comic. I don't want to spoil it because I really want people to read this. You don't have to read Black Hammer to appreciate it. I mean, it helps, but you don't really need to. It's so much about how you can try to do the right thing as a hero, but in doing that, you lose sight of what you're supposed to do as a parent. And it's one of the most poignant and moving comics I've read in quite a long time. And it really sort of reminds us of sometimes the most heroic thing somebody can do is just to be present as a parent. It's a masterpiece. It's probably one of the greatest things Jeff Lemire, and I know he's got a hell of a resume already. Probably one of the greatest things he's done in his career thus far. And it wasn't even a choice. Like, this is easily my nominee for best limited series.
Yeah, it was indeed very emotionally affecting. And you mentioned Shane. I mean, it treats the theme of fathers and sons very powerfully, and that's Shane's number one tearjerker. So,
yep.
If he hasn't read it, he needs to.
All right, next gentleman.
I trust Jeff Lemire. That's all I'll say about that. I'm sure I will get to it eventually, but I trust Jeff Lemire. All right. So I wound up going with Spider-Geddon here. I've read I read most of the tie-ins for it as well, or at least some of them. The Edge of Spider-Geddon for this as well. And going into it, I really expected it to just be a cash grab. Like, I expected it to just be,
Ian, why would you think that? There's no precedent for that. Come on.
Civil War II says what? But this actually turned out to be what feels like another labor of love, and it was assisted by Christos Gage being involved with it. He's a very reliable writer, has been for years, and
hell yeah.
and will be for years to come. And he really took the basic idea that Dan Slott had of a return to the previous threat that was being caused by the Inheritors, and actually ran with it. There's a couple of characters that were introduced in Spider-Verse that are killed off in this series. There's others that are lost. There's others that are changed forever. And we get the introduction of some very unique other Spider-Man of the universe. As I mentioned on the show, we get the video game Spider-Man involved here for the first time, with the white logo on his chest, who has a previous relationship with Dr. Octavius, because Dr. Otto Octavius was his mentor in the game. So when Superior Spider-Man shows up and it's Octavius, then obviously he's going to listen to him and want to assist in whatever he's having to say there. There's a Spider-Man that's introduced that's actually Norman Osborn, that was bit by the radioactive spider, who is a very chilling design with 6 arms and not somebody you'd want to meet in an alley. Let's put it that way. There's also one called Spider's Man, which is actually a collection of sentient spiders that believes it is Peter Parker. So it regularly says things like, if we defeat the Inheritors, can we eat them? Not that I would eat them, of course, because with great power comes great responsibility. and yeah, just it really just brings the law, the whole concept along further. And you get to see some, great characters that were introduced get more of a pull here. Spider-Punk has a lot more to do with this series than he did in the original. You get more Spider-Man and Leopardon, which makes me very happy because Japanese Spider-Man is the best. And we need a full series devoted to him and his mech. It would make me very happy. If Spider-Gwen gets a series, then damn it, so does Japanese Spider-Man. Enough said.
Seems fair.
Yep. And yeah, the Inheritors are a serviceable threat, and you get art by Todd Nauck in here in fill-in.
Oh, I love Todd Nauck.
Plus, you get art, I think, also by Jesus Saiz, if I remember correctly. Sorry, Jorge Molina. My mistake. Jorge Molina is the main artist of this, with some fill-ins by Todd Nauck. And yeah, just overall, it's a very interesting story, and it's at times Doc Ock's side versus the opposite side, and all trying to get together to defeat Morlun and his family. So good stuff.
All right, Murd.
All right. So yeah, in amongst all the cash grabs and the tawdry novelties that were most of the miniseries offerings of the year, I did pick up one miniseries that was just a good, solid, fun romp of a story. It was written by Gail Simone with art by Adriana Melo, and it features Plastic Man making his raucous and riotous return to the DC universe. Not related to the Plastic Man that's appearing in the Terrifics, I should add. I mean, this is kind of continuity loose, shall we say. But it's such a fun story, it's very easy not to care. So it's Gail Simone getting to write Plastic Man in his most malleable and goofy loony. He's total Looney Tunes in this, but still with a certain amount of pathos and heart. I mean, he comes across a lovable street urchin whom he tries to toys with the idea of adopting, who wants to be adopted by him, but whom he ultimately palms off on social services. And it's one of the worst decisions he makes in a series of bad decisions on his part. The plot is an agent of Spiral. So there is some current DC Universe continuity connections going on. Contacts him and warns him about a cabal of supervillains that's building some machinations in the background, and that only Plastic Man will be able to stop. And so it's Gail Simone returning to some of the things that she did so well when she was writing Secret Six. As a matter of fact, the Secret Six themselves have a cameo in the course of the miniseries, which made me quite happy. But it's even above and beyond Gail Simone writing for DC's classic villains, which she does better than most writers I could name. It's just her take on the lunacy that is Plastic Man. And it's I don't use the word Looney Tunes lightly here, because it's a very specific type of lunacy. Not only the fluidity of not only his thought process, but his squashable and stretchable body. Not only is that reminiscent of 1940s cartoons, but the sense of humor also, and just like the feel of his demi-monde, the world that he inhabits. It feels like it's got kind of that Runyon-esque 40s underworld flavor to it. Just the colorful Dick Tracy-like characters that inhabit it. The silly, very thickly accented New York mobster types. Gail Simone is having a good time writing this. That much is clear. And I certainly had a good time reading it. The artwork by Adriana Melo kept up with her scripts admirably. It was just a really fun, very well executed miniseries with no continuity strings attached. So yeah, it's. I haven't heard very many people talking about it, so I thought maybe I would be among the first, at least that I know of. So here I am, the first on this podcast anyway, since it was first elicited in previews. So yeah, the Plastic Man miniseries was good enough that I thought I would call it, among those miniseries I read, at least the best of the year.
Well, and considering how long it took Gail Simone to actually be able to write this series, like this is a series or miniseries that she pitched to DC Comics multiple times over the years. She's always wanted to write this character, and I'm glad she finally got the opportunity.
Oh, I didn't know that backstory, and thanks for filling us in on that.
Yeah. And let's point out again how Ian's extensive intelligence network once again has served the show. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
As for the listeners, their choice was pretty clear. And that's returning once again to the nominations is the darling of the Best of 2017 awards, Mr. Miracle.
Oh,
A 12-issue maxi series did indeed conclude in 2018, so that is the listener's choice by far. Another pretty strong runaway. By the same margin as The Immortal Hulk outstripped its competition. Nice. But the runner-up was Dr. Star and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows. Chris, listeners are also on your wavelength there. And following that, other possibilities, Lazarus X plus 66, The Highest House. A couple of people counted Kill or Be Killed as a miniseries. Eternity Girl, which I think was part of the Young Animal imprint. Old Man Hawkeye, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Proxima Centauri, and a few others. But those that actually make it onto the ballot for the category Best Limited Series are Dr. Star and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows, Spider-Geddon, Plastic Man, and Mr. Miracle. All right, so next up then will be the Best Single Issue or One-Shot of 2018, a category that was omitted from these awards for a few years, but then made its return a year or two ago. Ian, let's hear yours first.
All right, my single issue or one shot couldn't be any clearer. Action Comics number 1000.
Fine choice indeed. Mine is a bit of a dark horse. Doctor Strange number 9, a story entitled Bleaker.
That's not from Dark Horse. That's Marvel.
Ian. You know, there's something to be said when a man can deliver a joke that awful with a straight face. and no, wow. God, I'm so glad you're with us.
I do what I do, and what I do can sometimes be painful.
Indeed. All right, my choice, ladies and gentlemen, is Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 1.
Nice. All right, so Action Comics number 1000. When you've got an issue like this and you have so many amazing creators on board for it, it's very hard for it to not wind up on my list. I mean, looking at the creators alone in this, Bendis, John Cassaday, Olivia Coipel, Paul Dini, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Patrick Gleason, Butch Geist, Jeff Johns, Dan Jurgens, Tom King, Jim Lee, Clayman, Brad Meltzer, Jerry Ordway, Tim Sale, Louise Simonson, Scott Snyder, Kurt Swan, Peter Tomasi, Marv Wolfman, ... and more. Please, I mean, pretty much every single individual that I would consider an all-star is right there. And to get both new and old from DC as well, to get Louise Simonson back involved for the first time in a while was lovely to see for the story that she was involved with, and the artwork on this. Every single story popped. They're all short stories, but they do a very good job of telling the story that they need to be told. And it acts both as the end of an era for Action Comics and the beginning of a new one, because this was the first story that you saw Brian Michael Bendis work on for the title. But you also had some Dan Jurgens, who had been writing the title beforehand, and Tomasi, who'd been writing Superman. So it was very much the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. And they pulled it off splendidly, even with that frickin' price tag of $7.99, which I just had to point out at least once. One of the few times that I would say that a issue like this is absolutely worth it, just for the amount of content that we got, and just the great Superman action that was inside. So enjoyed every single minute of it, and I actually kind of want to read it again right now, just because it made me happy.
The best reason to read anything, I think.
Indeed.
That was very well chosen, Ian. It was indeed an argosy of awesomeness. I struggled a little bit with the best single issue or one shot, more than I usually do. And most of the ones that I came up with also ended up on the listener's ballot, and I try not to duplicate what they do, just to make sure that their voice is heard to the greatest extent possible. But then, kind of as a late entry, just last night I was combing through the last pile of comics from 2018 that I have lying around my apartment, and I found something that came out right near the end of 2018, the 9th issue of the excellent Mark Waid written Doctor Strange series, which I wanted to have represented in my nominations somehow, because it has been a great series, taking the Good Doctor in some strange new directions. And case in point, the 9th issue of that series was a standalone story. It was called Bleaker, as in Bleecker. This not more bleak than something else, but the street on which Doctor Strange makes his home, where his Sanctum Sanctorum is located. And the premise is basically Doctor Strange versus gentrification. It's about Doctor Strange's struggle over a period of several years, just a series of flashbacks jumping ahead in time in between incidents of Doctor Strange's intermittent clashes with sinister real estate moguls and land developers who have supernatural connections in realms beyond, who want to develop and then turn into like a big glass-plated shopping plaza monstrosity, Doctor Strange's nice little bohemian neighborhood on Bleecker Street. And Doctor Strange just kind of cavalierly dismisses most of these attempts at doing away with his neighborhood and wrecking the lives of his neighbors and friends who live there. It's almost comical, the ease with which he – in fact, it is downright comical, the ease with which he just deflects these attempts at doing this wrong to his neighborhood. And it's just fun to watch how Mark Waid writes the character with just a great deal of mystical know-how, a dash of arrogance, and but in the end, it's his personal emotional connection to his community and the people who live there, and their in turn connection to him that helps to win the day against these what turns out to be a demonic foe. And at the very end of the issue, we see a cameo from, touching off the next story arc, from a now returning and a very old supporting member of Doctor Strange's supporting cast. So it's a great little self-contained story with a little hint of some more great things to come in this run. So I decided as kind of a last-minute entry to make Doctor Strange #9 Bleaker my nomination for this category.
Mert, I've been loving the Waid run, and I'm behind on it. I haven't actually read that issue yet, so now you've really whetted my appetite for it. So, bravo.
It is good fun.
If there's one thing this New Yorker knows about, it's gentrification in New York. So, yes, that issue's going to be great.
Looking forward to see Doctor Strange repulse it.
Yep.
Very good.
All right, so Marvel 2-1 Annual #1. So this is the current Marvel 2-1 series, which I've been raving about on the show now for quite some time. The writer is Chip Zdarsky. I'm also going to talk about more later on in this episode as well. Pencils by forgive me. I think it's Declan Shalvey. How do you say his name, Ian?
Shelby, I believe.
Declan Shelvey. Color Jordi Belair. Zdarsky, who's also a penciler in his own right, does the cover. This is one of the best Doctor Doom stories ever written. And that's saying something, because if you listen to our Doctor Doom Spotlight, I helmed some years back. I love the character Doctor Doom. He is my favorite villain, hands down, in comics. I really hope we see him in the MCU done properly, not all the ways they've ruined the character in various films and other media adaptations over the years. And I don't want to spoil too much, but essentially this is when when Victor's in the infamous Iron Man persona. So he's trying to actually act as a more benevolent force, and he's traveling around with Ben and Johnny. This is the time period where Reed and Sue are off in the multiverse, and Ben and Johnny think they're dead, or Ben thinks they're dead. Johnny still thinks they're out there, and they're going on various quests. And in this story, it's all about what makes Victor Von Doom who he is, and why he has the feelings he has about the world and his place in it. And they also go into the various Reed Richards of the multiverse. And the story is really about how these Reed Richards are basically trying to sort of control Doom and prevent future Dooms from emerging. And that's all I'll say. It's deeply moving. There's a great – anything story involving like the psyche of Doctor Doom, there's a great deal of pathos and also just violence and horror attached to it. And Chip Zdarsky, man, he's one of the best things going with Marvel Comics right now. So This is a masterful one and done, which again is always seems to be like a dying art in comics today, especially among the big two. I can't recommend this issue enough, especially if you're a Doctor Doom fan. That's my pick.
Now, is this the same Council of Reeds that were in Hickman's run, or is this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
The listeners, for their part, kind of a tight horse race with 2 single issues or one-shots amassing the lion's share of the votes. One of them was Action Comics number 1000. We don't need to worry about there being a 2-way tie because Ian's already put that one on the ballot as his nominee. But the other one that was tied with Action Comics number 1000 is Swamp Thing Winter Special.
Oh, I want to read that. I've heard wonderful things about it.
I like Action Comics number 1000. It's kind of a jam-packed anthology. A lot of good creators contributing, including the final work of Len Wein.
And there's a Tom King story in that, I believe, as well.
I believe you're right, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. More about him later, too.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we have far from heard the last of Mr. King. Other runners-up, Batman Annual number 3 also would have been third place. And also a couple of votes going in the way of Saga number 54.
Oh! More on that in a moment.
Oh, I strongly suspect.
Oh, boy.
But then to review the best single issue and one-shot category, the nominees there are Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 1, Action Comics number 1000, Doctor Strange number 9, and Swamp Thing Winter Special. All right, which brings us to the next category, Best Cliffhanger or Moment. A single impactful moment in a particular comic book. So let's see. I think it's my turn to go first. Okay. My choice for best moment or cliffhanger from Gideon Falls number 5 by Jeff Lemire, The Black Barn Opens.
So ominous. Ian, go ahead.
Well, Ben Grimm marries Alicia Masters.
Oh. Nice. And mine is from the aforementioned Saga number 54. And again, I don't want to spoil. All I'll say is death.
Yep, I've already had it spoiled by the listeners' nominations, but for everyone else out there listening, your tact is appreciated.
Including me.
Yes, Ian and I are both a couple of trades behind. I think the last one I read was volume 4. Ian, how about you?
I'm 2 behind, so I have the most recent 2 sitting on my shelf right now.
Ian, that needs to be rectified immediately.
Yep.
All right, so this little bit of non-big 2 attention here for me. Gideon Falls is kind of a supernatural horror and psychological suspense story being told by Jeff Lemire in partnership with artist Andrea Sorrentino. And it tells the story of the small town of Gideon Falls. There's actually a pair of protagonists who are investigating the same sinister phenomena from 2 different angles. I actually just learned, doing a little background reading, that these were originally supposed to be 2 different stories Lemire had cooking, neither one of which was quite clicking. And then he just smooshed the 2 together into a single narrative, and suddenly the 2 halves made a whole. So in Gideon Falls, there's kind of a local legend about a mysterious building known as the Black Barn, which is supposed to house all kinds of untold evils and horrors. It kind of appears and disappears, comes and goes. Whenever its passing is marked by crop circle-like large rectangular spaces of flattened grass in open fields near the edge of town. It's popped up here and there. It's even been cited to places other than Gideon Falls, which is how I think one of the main characters tracks it there. That being Norton Sinclair, who's this irascible conspiracy theorist, who's a character that Jeff Lemire is a character for whom Jeff Lemire has been trying to find the proper vehicle for years. And now here he is. The other main character is a disgraced priest named Father Fred, who's moved to Gideon Falls to try to make a new start for himself and to get his faith back on track. And suddenly he finds himself mixed up in this mystery of the Black Barn, into which local people, most recently like a teenage girl, have been disappearing for years. So their two investigations begin to converge on one another as time passes. And by issue number 5, at the conclusion of that issue, the Black Barn finally manifests itself. It's a gloriously off-putting, creepy image between Andrea Sorrentino's pencils and Dave Stewart's colors. It's just blacks and whites and red. It almost looks like a negative image, the likes of which is seen in the opening sequence to the classic TV horror anthology Tales from the Dark Side. The Barn has received a masterfully constructed build-up from Lemire in the course of the first several issues. So when the Barn finally does shift into view and its doors yawn open like the maw of some demonic beast, and one of the main characters dash towards it, to investigate what horrors and what revelations it may contain. It has the desired impact. I don't even really care for horror that much, but this is a series that goes about it in an understated. It's more of a Hitchcockian kind of horror. It doesn't rely too much on gore or violence or anything like that, and so the payoff is that much sweeter when it finally comes. I haven't even dared to crack open the 6th issue, although I do have it. But that's that's the sign of a well-crafted cliffhanger, I think. Not so. One of two signs of a well-crafted cliffhanger is either making you want to dash off and experience the next part of the story as soon as possible, or alternatively, making you want to put it off longer and savor it when it comes. So I decided not to skim the 6th issue of that series just because I was so well built up by that cliffhanger. So there you go. This is a series that I picked up in the first place when I learned that there was some kind of a haunted barn angle in it. A barn that is very much the Jungian shadow of the much brighter, jollier barn in which I have spent much of my life and which has been occupation and a source of sustenance for me from childhood up to present. So sitting here in my gaily painted Christmas barn reading about a black barn. Very satisfying for me, and the denouement of that barn at the end of issue 5 of Gideon Falls did not disappoint. So that's my choice for the best cliffhanger or moment of this past year.
I'm very happy to hear that the Christmas barn is not haunted.
Well, if it is, let's say that the ghosts are friendly.
Fair enough.
Very festive phantoms.
Yeah, why not? All right. So I went with Ben Grimm marrying Alicia Masters. Talk about something that was years and years and years and years and years and years and years in the making. It's about damn time, and Dan Slott made it happen. When the Fantastic Four came back after years of not actually being a ongoing series, I really wanted this to be one of the things that happened right off the bat. And at the end of issue 1, Ben proposes, and then by the time we're at, I believe, issue 5, that's the actual wedding issue. And it's done by multiple artists, and it's an oversized issue, as well it should be, where we get to see the entire day as it's going forward. The preparation. There's a terrific there's an absolutely terrific segment with art portraying the actual origin of the Fantastic Four again, because it's happened many a time. But Mike Allred portrays that portion beautifully.
She sure does.
Oh my God, Mike! And not only that, but we also get to see some moments between Ben and Sue that we hadn't seen before, and how it looks like, Sue is doing her best to try to set up Alicia with Ben in the first place. That Ben was being skittish, and she was basically helping him along to try and get the two to go out on a date, and to have him go over to have him sculpted, to then go out after that, and it all went forward culminating in the fact that she helps out so much to the point where Ben has to go to Sue and say, look, Sue, thanks for all your help, but you're getting things that you like, and Alicia's not you. And that's essentially the moment where we realize that Ben is long over Sue and has now found the love of his life, and that's Alicia.
And Ian, it's a great point because the story also does, because I just read it recently, it does a wonderful job of reminding the readers of there was this triangle between Reed, Sue, and Ben. I'm sure Reed, being oblivious, wasn't even aware of it, but and that his feelings for her was what really motivated him to get on that rocket.
Yep. When
he knew that it was a bad idea. I really recommend, and I've mentioned this on the air in years past, the Claremont classic, penciled by John Bogdan, of Fantastic Four versus the X-Men. It sounds like a 1980s throwaway miniseries. It's a classic. And Claremont just nails all the characters, their dynamics, and he really goes into that aspect of the history. So there's also another tremendous capturing of the character of Dr. Doom and his rivalry with Reed. So that story is a great sort of works well with what you're describing here.
Yeah,
great selection.
Thank you. And the Adam Hughes portion of the issue with Johnny and the bachelor party was absolutely perfect. And Peter keeps trying to give his wedding speech, and Ben's like, "No, it's not happening. Also, you're not invited." Which was just even more beautiful. And then we get to the actual wedding itself, which is my moment, just for the fact that all issue long, Reed's been gone. Reed's been off in a corner, like not paying attention to the events of the day, and until we finally find out why, that he was creating this device to ensure that no matter what, this wedding went forward, that they would have the time to say I do, even if the world is coming to an end, even if Galactus shows up, even if they're needed more than anything else. Outstanding. And that's exactly what happens. And they say their I do's, and off they go to fight another battle, with Alicia telling Ben to go clobber him. And beautiful issue, beautiful moment, and well deserves my vote.
It's great to have the FF back, isn't it?
It really is. I'm a huge FF fan. Have been for years. It was missing. It was missing. It really was.
Okay, so this is going to be a very quick testimonial because I don't want to spoil. All I'll say is this, and I mean, I've been praising Saga ad infinitum or ad nauseum, depending on your perspective, on the show for years. To me, it is easily one of the best comics that's being produced right now in American comics. And this issue ends. First of all, what's important here, right after this issue, they announced they were going on hiatus for a year. So the story ends with a major death, which you do not see coming. And then the issue ends. This character dies, the issue ends. That's it. It's over. And then letters page Vaughn goes, okay, we'll see you in a year, basically. Again, this is one of the most moving. I mean, it's a comic in a science sort of fantasy universe, similar to our own in some ways and very different in others. But it's ultimately about family and the trials and tribulations and the heartache and the joy of being part of a family. And being part of a family also means that you will lose people. People will die. And throughout this series, you're always reminded that. One of the reasons why I'm such a fan now of and I always extol creator-owned comics, and why I gravitate more to them now when it comes to my reading pile than the big two, is that to me these stories just have more weight because they're not corporate properties, and eventually they will end. The creators have endings in mind because they control these properties. And there's no better example of that than Saga. No better example when it comes to this issue, in which Wyatt remains one of the most important comics being produced today. Yeah, it's on hiatus, but you know what? It's worth the wait, and I'll be right in line to read it the minute it comes back out. So, Saga 54 is my cliffhanger.
So the K in Brian K. Vaughan stands for King of the Cliffhanger?
I think in this case, absolutely, sir.
Only if cliffhanger is spelled with a K.
I hope so.
You and I both, Ian. You and I both. Now, the listeners agreed with Chris by one vote. This was another semi-horse race, which Saga won. But since Chris has chosen the climax of Saga number 54 as his choice, the listeners' second choice now becomes their nominee in this category, and that is the end of Batman number 55, which has Nightwing being shot in the head by KG Beast. Great moment in a series of great moments.
Oh, yeah.
Also getting some attention from the listeners is a couple of people nominated Ben and Alicia's wedding as well, Ian. A couple of people also nominated though that scene you mentioned earlier with the big Fantastic Four family reunion to take down the Griever.
Yep.
Black Hammer, a couple of things happening in the Black Hammer series. The revelation in Action Comics number 1000, kind of setting up Brian Michael Bendis's first Superman comics about the destruction of Krypton was another big thing. Yeah. So that's how she stands. In the category of Best Cliffhanger or Moment, the nominees are Saga number 54, enough said, Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters' wedding, The Black Barn opens from Gideon Falls number 5, and Nightwing is shot, Batman number 55.
Great choices.
All right, that brings us on down to Best Storyline. Ian, I think it's your turn again to go first.
Okay. My best storyline, because I had to fit it in there somewhere, even though the series has already been mentioned by Murd, Sorcerer Supreme of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange.
Ooh. Yep, that is a good choice. My choice, I believe, is going to be, we'll call it Awakening, and that is the first arc or two, referred to collectively, of the new Hawkman series.
All right. Well, mine is – this is a two-parter and another one of what I consider one of the great comics of the day, from Lazarus, Fracture.
Very good, very good. So Mark, the thing about Mark Waid that I've appreciated so much over the last couple of years is that Mark Waid has I feel like he has touched every single character in the Marvel Universe over the last
pretty much
5, 6, 7 years. And he really hadn't done much with Doctor Strange until now when he's writing the series. And to have such a going back to what I said about Immortal Hulk, to go back to have such a unique take on the character here with Doctor Strange. I mean, Stephen Strange has lost his magic before. You know, it's not the first time that's happened. However, this is the first time where he cannot seem to get it back on Earth until he meets with Tony Stark, and Tony's like, you know, you talk about trying all these other dimensions and stuff. Have you tried space? And you can almost see the light bulbs going off in Doctor Strange's head, like, no, I haven't tried space. And lo and behold, we get a space epic starring Dr. Stephen Strange. Now, I will fully admit, I am only 4 issues into this because that's what's on Unlimited right now. However, I will be catching up the minute that the next issue is available. I think issue 5 hits literally next week.
Ian, I read the whole arc. You're not going to be disappointed.
Okay, great. So I'm putting that in, not completely done with it, but I know it's going to satisfy me just from what I'm seeing so far, which is in the same ways that you've seen Iron Man deal with addiction. He's kind of dealing with that with Dr. Stephen Strange in the way that Doctor Strange is addicted to his magic.
Good point.
And you know, it leads him to make some very harsh decisions, and makes him almost a little bit mad at times to try and regain what has been lost to him, all at the same time not even knowing what he did to remove the magic in the first place, whether or not he has gaps in his memory, he doesn't know what that's from, whether or not it was a villain that did it, whether or not it was some sort of cosmic entity that has stopped it. But either way, here he is in space trying to get it all back. He's running around with not exactly a sidekick, but a cohort. And I won't give away what he does to her at one point. It's actually that is kind of you can't come back from it. In fact, it actually reminded me a little bit of something that happened in the Umbrella Academy Netflix series, which I'll talk about on our next comic talk. But it's one of those instances where you're just like, damn, you went there, Steven. And you really, really shouldn't have. And it damages what I feel about him in that aspect. And I feel like he's growing as the series goes on, but at the same time, you also just realize just how much he feels like he needs to be the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yep.
And it's
man.
a damn good stuff so far.
Mert?
Okay. All right. So Hawkman. Which, as we saw earlier, was one of the listeners' second choices for Best New Series. And incidentally, before I go any further, I do owe an apology to Brian Hitch, because I did look it up just a couple of seconds ago and found that he did pencil every single issue of this series so far.
Oh, wow.
So he hasn't just been in and out. He has penciled all of it, and he has kept to a schedule.
Nice.
Kind of an unusual thing for him, but it's much to be encouraged. So congratulations, Mr. Hitch. His artwork has looked quite crisp and quite nice on this series so far. So it's his artwork and Robert Venditti's writing, and the plot has been an intriguing one to me as a student of DC history, because it does delve into, well, hitherto unseen depths in the ongoing saga of Carter Hall, the Hawkman, taking things even further than Jeff Johns had done years ago when he undertook the Augean labor of trying to make sense of the character's twisted and multifarious history. Scott Snyder kind of touched on this in the Dark Knight's Metal event, where he teased us with the fact that, hey, maybe Prince Khufu was not actually the first incarnation of the Hawkman, of the being that we've now come to know as Carter Hall in the present day. And so Carter Hall tumbles to this knowledge, and in this series, which is as of now 9 issues old, he's still working on teasing out all the hitherto unknown details. But we start with him acting as, well, he's the most gifted archaeologist in the DC universe, and now he's acting like it. He's probing into the mystery of his own history. He's trying to unearth the truths of his own immensely extensive past, and that means taking his search into outer space, because, as he has learned, not all of his past reincarnations have taken place on planet Earth, and they haven't necessarily happened linearly. He's been hopping around in his reincarnations in time and space, and so he goes to recover these lost bits of his past, and goes to some well-known exotic outer space locales in the DC universe in the course of so doing. It's been an enjoyable ride and an interesting mystery. We've, I think, learned most of the pertinent details by now, which I won't spoil here, but suffice to say the planet Thanagar has even more to do with Carter Hall's past than had previously been thought.
Interesting.
So, the further reconciliation between Qatar Hall of the Silver Age and Carter Hall of the Golden Age, plus a few brand new and fun and interesting reincarnations along the way. Just to tease you, there was actually this Hawk entity, whatever name you want to call him by, actually did show up on the planet Krypton at one point.
Oh, wow.
It's like a Silver Age imaginary story, except it's actually in continuity, and it's fairly important to Hawkman's ongoing saga here. So kudos to Robert Venditti for coming up with this. I mean, he's kind of just unraveling the skein that was handed off to him by Scott Snyder, but he's doing so very well. And it's been an interesting story to follow. So I give that my best storyline nomination.
Mert, I got to pick that up because I've always been fascinated by the Hawkman concept, and you've whet my appetite there. And again, whenever we talk about Hawkman, I have to direct the listeners to the masterful, just consummate class on Hawkman, which is the Spotlight on the Hawkman, helmed by our glorious co-founder Peter Rios,
yes,
several years back. It is one. If you want a master class in how to do a spotlight, that's the one. I've listened to it multiple times. I've learned from that spotlight, not only just about Hawkman, but how to approach a spotlight. And Peter expertly unravels the extremely convoluted history of Hawkman up to the point when that episode was recorded. It's tremendous.
That would be episode 989, Spotlight on Hawkman and Hawkgirl.
Ian, I know I could count on that.
That was indeed clutch, Ian.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so Lazarus is also on hiatus, although it's coming back soon in a prestige format edition. And I can assure you that'll be worth the higher price. This is another book I've raved about incessantly over the years. There are certain books which I think are just on an elite sort of echelon in comics right now. Saga's one, Lazarus is another. Just quickly, if people aren't familiar with it, it's a near future, and it's I think a frightening near future where corporate families have become so powerful that they've basically divided up the earth into fiefdoms they control, and countries as we know them have essentially vanished, and the world is now ruled by these dynasties who are at odds with each other and often in competition for resources, hegemony, etc. And each family has a Lazarus, which is a genetically enhanced being who sort of acts as their champion, their warrior, their assassin, spy, you name it. And the book follows the Carlyle corporate clan. And this 2-issue story is about one of the sons of the Carlyle scion, or one of the Carlyle patriarch, I should say, who had vanished. And you thought what might have been dead, and it turns out that he has washed ashore in what was the country of Norway, which is under the control of a rival corporate family that's at war with his family, and how he tries to reinvent himself as a fisherman. He falls in love with a local woman. They have a child. He becomes part of their family, and he basically is trying to start a new life free of the terrible intrigue and pressures of his corporate clan. That's all I'll say, because this is another story where at the end of it, I wept. And I don't do that often with comics or anything I read. But look, there's a lot of good writers in comics, but then there's Greg Rucka. And what he's done with this concept, the Lazarus concept, very few writers could do what he's doing, because he's just that good. And Michael Lark's work on these 2 issues in particular is without question for me, and I've seen most of the work he's done, some of the greatest work of his career. If you love dystopian stuff, for example, and stuff that's so well versed in, the here and now and a possible very near future, this is the book you should be reading. And it's, again, this is what makes me believe in comics. So that's my pick. The Fracture storyline. It's just a 2-issue storyline, but it's that good. It's just masters at the top of their craft.
Mm.
Very cool.
Mm. All right. As for the listeners, they've got themselves locked into a 3-way tie. So we'll hear from all of them. The first one of these 3 was actually, I probably would have chosen that as my nominee, but I didn't want to step on the listener's toe, so I went with Hawkman instead. But one of the 3 listener nominations is a 3-issue arc called Cold Days, which ran in Batman numbers 51 through 53.
Oh.
Yep, it was the follow-up to the abortive
So
Batman-Catwoman wedding. Bruce Wayne is dealing with that, while at the same time getting swept up into jury duty during a trial of Mr. Freeze. It's art by Lee Weeks, along with Tom King's script. I mean, comics rarely come better than that these days.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something, and I firmly believe this. Down the road, when they say, okay, what are some of the all-time great Batman stories, this one will be in there.
This specific 3-issue story?
Absolutely.
Or just the...
Absolutely.
All right. I'm glad it's on the ballot. Also from the listeners, the aforementioned abortive Batman wedding, that whole lead up to Batman number 50, and including Batman number 50 itself, and Black Hammer Age of Doom.
Damn. Good stuff.
Yep, good stuff indeed. Our listeners know what they're talking about. Okay, so our nominees then for Best Storyline within a series or across multiple series: Fracture from Lazarus, Sorcerer Supreme of the Galaxy in the current run of Doctor Strange, Awakening in the new volume of Hawkman, and then from the listeners, Cold Days, Batman number 51 through 53, Black Hammer Age of Doom, and the Batman Wedding storyline. All right, we're at the halfway point here, folks. 8 categories covered, 8 to go. And the next one in the second half of our nomination show, Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit. All right, I'm going to go first this time, and I'm going to throw out there one that I guarantee you didn't see coming and that probably won't be on either of your lists: Ice Cream Man.
Certainly not.
Yep.
All right, my selection is The Dead Hand.
I really hope there's a character named Hagen Dazs in that series you just mentioned, Murd, but I'm going to go with Crowded out of Image Comics.
Crowded, okay. And who publishes The Dead Hand, Chris?
Image.
Oh, there we go. It's an Image trifecta. Ice Cream Man comes to you from the new House of Ideas as well. This series is... I was surprised myself at how much I liked it. I mainly tried it because it had the words ice cream in the title. But it's another example of a supernatural / psychological horror series. It's very much an anthology. It's in the vein of the Twilight Zone or Tales from the Dark Side. Every issue is, no two issues are quite the same in tone or storytelling style. It's kind of like 31 flavors of fear. Every issue is very well done despite the differences in the stories, and each one tells a little self-contained, but in some cases subtly interconnected story of human frailty or desire, and there are often supernatural wrinkles thrown in, not always, but sometimes. And lurking in the background, connecting the seemingly unrelated anthologized tales of horror still further, there is a common antagonist lurking in the background, and that is the eponymous Ice Cream Man in his spotless white uniform and his visored cap and his broad grin, just pedaling his van around small-town America and into the big cities, through the highways and byways, dispensing you don't want to know what. But he seems to be at the background of a lot of the horrible things that are happening. His true motives are unknown. He might not even be entirely malevolent, although on the surface of it he certainly is. And every once in a while, another character, a man in black, a cowboy dressed in head to toe in black, complete with black hat, who, uncharacteristically of people in black hats from Westerns, he appears to be the good guy. His name is Caleb, and he sometimes shows up and stops the Ice Cream Man from dispensing his frozen treats to his unsuspecting victims. And these two have a very long history, apparently. We're told at one point that the Ice Cream Man is actually named Ricardus, and he and Caleb have been crossing swords for a long time. But there's clearly a broader narrative going on here, but each issue is, as I've said, self-contained and tells a very satisfying story of fear and it's well done horror and well. And when I say well written, I don't just mean that the plots are well crafted. I mean that the prose, the dialogue, is very well executed by the writer, someone named W. Maxwell Prince, of whom I've never heard before, and the art is done by Martin Morazzo. It's a creative team that's. I think this must be a freshman effort for them, but it's a surprisingly satisfying series to someone who doesn't normally relish horror, and the interesting wrinkle of the recurring antagonist just makes it even more interesting. So this is something that I don't think got a whole lot of buzz when it came out from Image, but it's something that I think more people ought to be reading, and so I'm calling that a sleeper and possibly the best of the year. So Ice Cream Man goes on the ballot from me.
All right, Murd. Okay, The Dead. I think I mentioned this in the air as well. I'm a big Kyle Higgins fan. He's the writer. I've loved everything he's done. Hadrian's Wall, Cal. Right now he's doing a great Winter Soldier miniseries for Marvel. And I'm always a good sucker for a Cold War era story. And it's a great miniseries about espionage agents who are tasked with guarding this secret town in the former Soviet Union that contains a AI entity that thinks it's actually a little boy that is trying to mature and grow. But in reality, if they don't keep it on sort of an even keel with its perceived emotions, it will launch a nuclear strike. And I'll just leave it at that. But it's a fascinating take on the consequences of an arms race and the legacy of the Cold War, and people who are sort of trapped in this kind of this bubble of time where, I mean, life is going on, but they have to, and they're raising children who are not allowed to leave this community per se, and how they're all just there to make sure this artificial intelligence, which has the mentality of like a tween, all right, doesn't go off the rails and launch a nuclear strike. So I'll leave it there, but it's Kyle Higgins, and as far as I'm concerned, that's enough. So that's my sleeper.
Always happy to see more from the creator of Cowl.
Indeed.
So continuing the image trifecta, my series is Crowded. Now, the basic premise of this, and I'm just going to read it straight off the website because they actually do a good job of explaining it. 10 minutes in the future, the world runs on an economy of job shares and apps, like Reaper, a platform for legal assassination. When the apparently average Charlie Ellison wakes up one day to find out she's the target of a $1 million Reaper campaign, she hires Vita, the lowest-rated bodyguard on the Defend app. Now, with all of Los Angeles hunting Charlie, she and Vita will have to figure out who wants her dead and why before the campaign's 30 days, or their lives are over. Yeah. This is a very creative series that feels like it could happen, and that's frightening. Like the actual site, like the one at the Reaper site, just feels like GoFundMe or Kickstarter, where, I mean, you literally put up a campaign, and if it funds, then everybody has the right to kill you, and whoever kills you gets the money. But if you survive the 30 days, then nobody can take a hit out on you again. It's that simple. And
it's a great concept.
It really is. The Christopher Sabella of Shanghai Red, Welcome Back and Heartthrob is the writer. Been Eisner nominated in the past, and Rose Stein and Ted Brandt do the art. And it's really kinetic and at times obtuse art, but in a good way. Everything feels, all the characters feel real and unique and distinct. Plus, the relationships are really starting to build as I read more of it. The first trade is going to be out in March for anybody who's interested in it, but it's also all available online. I got it in an Image Comics sale on Comixology, and I am definitely interested in where this is going to go. And with the 30-day time period, that also means that, like you were saying earlier, Chris, this could very well be a series that has a set ending in mind and will not go on forever and ever and ever. So give me more, and I will very much take it.
All right.
Oh. Truly a tale for our times.
You ain't kidding.
Now, as for the listeners, they were kind of scattershot in this category. There were only 2 things that got more than 1 nomination. The one of those 2 that got the most was The Immortal Hulk. So there it is, appearing on the ballot another time, thanks to the listeners. The other one was Skyward from Mark Miller. Other things that got nominations here or there, just 1 apiece. The miniseries War Bears from Dark Horse, GoBots, High Heaven, Infinity Countdown, X-Men Grand Design, The Wrong Earth, Oblivion Song from Kirkman, Domino, which probably would have been my second choice, The Punisher Max the Platoon, The Magic Circle, another Miller World choice, Deathbed, and the list goes on.
Punisher Max the Platoon by Garth Ennis is outstanding. That's a great war comic. I highly recommend that.
All right, very good. Okay, so nominees for sleepers or surprise hits of 2018, The Dead Hand, Crowded, Ice Cream Man, and The Immortal Hulk. All right. Now we come to the best ongoing comic of 2018. This is one that could have but did not need to, could have begun but did not need to begin in 2018 to qualify for nomination. All right, Chris, what have you got?
My choice is a book that I have been praising to the skies since it started. Because it's been consistently outstanding. It's Marvel's Star Wars title, the flagship title.
Outstanding.
Always a fine choice.
It's a trap.
Wait, hold on, Ian. Let's get the inflection right. It's a trap.
It's a trap. There we go. So I'm pretty sure this was my best new comic of 2017, but it is now my best ongoing comic for 2018. Runaways by Marvel Comics.
And, I realize that after having thought about this multiple times, I still haven't actually arrived at a conclusion as to what should be included here, as to what I should nominate. I had a list of possibilities, so I'm just going to kind of throw one of them out there. I'm going to go with something else that you've been praising to the skies lately, the Avengers series.
Ooh.
Yep, current volume by Aaron and McGinnis.
Well done.
Good choice, Murd. All right, so I won't belabor the point too much because I've spoken about this series so much, but starting with Jason Aaron, now Kieran Gillen is writing it. But when you talk about the essence of Star Wars, this series takes place in the time period of the original films. It captures the fun, it captures the spirit, it captures the personality and interplay of the leading characters. It's fresh. It's vital. If you're a fan of Star Wars, if you love those original characters and that world they inhabited, and if you're not reading this book, for pity's sake, go out, get the trades. I think there's an omnibus out now too, of a big chunk of it. You will not be disappointed. When Marvel started this series several years back with issue 1, it was wonderful. It has been consistently fantastic since then, and any one of the stories they've done in this series would be fantastic on the big screen and or as like a television special. It's Star Wars come to life. The best facets of that movie universe is in this comic, and I cannot recommend it enough. It has never disappointed me. Every single issue, and this is saying something, I have loved. There's been great standalone stories. There's been overlapping arcs. The storyline Hope Dies was phenomenal. The artwork has been consistently amazing. The artists they brought onto this series, especially Salvador LaRocca. I'll put it this way. When I get my monthly shipment, it is one of the first comics I read immediately. So, and I've read crappy Star Wars comics in my life too, but this is as good as it gets. And that's my ongoing book.
I think I've decided, Chris, that in the lead up for the new Star Wars movie, I'm just going to burn through everything that's on Unlimited for this series, because my Star Wars reading, especially when it comes to comics, is not very much. But I keep hearing so many positive things about the series that I got to give it a shot.
Absolutely, my friend.
All right. So Runaways. Runaways has been one of my favorite series for years. It was like Fantastic Four. It went away for a while, and it finally came back right around the time of the new Hulu series on Hulu. The writer is Rainbow Rowell, and the penciler up until now has been Chris Anka, who is easily one of my favorite artists in Marvel's stable. However, he will be leaving the book soon for other ventures, both at Marvel and elsewhere. I believe he's actually going to be writing a backup story in Young Justice number 5. So his first DC work will be coming under Bendis's helm. So that's a positive, in my opinion. Just this series continues to be excellent. It's just about on par with what Brian K. Vaughan gave us with the Runaways in the first place. Every character feels like they should. Chase feels like Chase. Nico feels like Nico. Molly is as witty and youthful and the life of the party as ever. Just everything about this just makes me fill with glee every single time I sit down and read it. And it captures the characters beautifully. The most recent arc dealt with everything from Doctor Doom to feeling out of place in a society that you were once a standout for the way you looked, and now everybody looks like you. That's what Gert has been experiencing. Like, she's the purple hair kid, but literally everybody has purple hair. So she's going through a crisis of conscience there, and a crisis of personality. They've dealt with some returns that I won't spoil, and we still have a bunch of the characters that were in the original run bouncing forward and back, basically, to be in this whenever they're needed. So it's one of the reasons why I love this series, and I will continue to read it as long as Rainbow Rowell's the writer, because she's doing a damn good job of making this series feel like it belongs.
Wonderful. I love the Runaways concept.
Good stuff.
Never really got into it, but I'm glad that the current run is to your liking, Ian.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but for anybody who did enjoy the original stuff, you're definitely going to like this. And for that matter, anybody who enjoys Rainbow Rowell's novels might want to give this a shot, because it very much is in her same voice that she wrote things like her award-winning novels in before. God, what's it called now? This is me trying to remember things on the spot. Occasionally, I'll just completely forget the name of it. Fanboy. There we go. Fanboy is a fangirl. Fangirl is the name of her comic, and she also has of her book, and then she also has a book called Carry On, which also takes place in that universe. It's basically the fake Harry Potter that in Fangirl they're writing fanfic of. She then wrote the fake Harry Potter book called Carry On. So go figure.
Right. So she wrote a story about a fanfic book, and then she actually wrote the fanfic book.
Correct. Yeah, she wrote a story about somebody who writes fanfic, and then she actually wrote the book that the fanfic's based on.
Well, that's layers within layers. I like that.
Yep.
All right. So I just threw onto the ballot the current volume of Avengers, written by Jason Aaron, art by Ed McGuinness. Everything Chris has been saying about it is well-founded. I own several issues of it, but hadn't really had a chance to crack them until I did my review. Basically, I just sat down and speed read every single comic I bought for the past year. And in so doing, I came to realize just what a great find this Avengers run is. I mean, it's a stiff, concentrated dose of everything that is fun and exciting about superhero storytelling in the Marvel Universe across several different subgenres. We've got cosmic superheroics. We've got horror-tinged superheroics. There are vampires involved at times. And we've got mythologically derived stuff, especially coming up as War of the Realms is coming. And also more development of that very fun concept of the prehistoric Avengers that Jason Aaron introduced, which found its way onto last year's Best of 2017 voting as an interesting new character concept. So that's playing out in that series. It's big, it's widescreen. McGuinness's art is a treat. So yeah, it deserves to be on this ballot.
Hell yeah.
Although, if I'm being honest, the one that I probably would have nominated, I refrained from doing so because I didn't want to steal it away from the listeners. Their number one choice was Tom King's Batman.
Ha-ha.
Yes, by far and away. That's one of the biggest runaways in this entire nominations process.
I was thinking of choosing that too, but I figured the listeners were going to choose that. So
my choice of runaways was the second biggest runaway.
Oh my God. Man, the panache that you deliver those flat jokes, Ian, I got to tell you, there's an art there, my friend.
Yeah, well, it's years of experience.
Isn't he swell, gang? What a great addition to the cast.
All right.
Let's see.
OGN, right, Murr? It's the next one?
Huh?
Next category is OGN, right?
Yeah, it will be. Let's see. The listeners' runners up were Black Hammer, which is should qualify as an ongoing, even though it's being published as a series of limited series. It's as long as it keeps on being published continuously. It's regardless of the numbering scheme, it's ongoing. And second runner-up, Gideon Falls. So, best ongoing comic nominees: Star Wars, Runaways, Avengers, Batman. Right. And this brings us then to Best Graphic Album, which includes either original graphic novels or collections, paperback or hardcover, of older material. And Ian, I think it's your turn to go first.
Well, it's the last time I will be able to say these words. Invincible Ultimate Collection, Volume 12.
Reefer Madness Comics.
I can't wait to hear about that. My selection is by the living masters Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. My heroes have always been junkies.
Ah, fine choice. I thought that might draw your attention, Chris.
Indeed.
It's such a creative team. All right, so Reefer Madness Comics. The graphic album is a category that troubles me a little bit because I don't buy very many of them in the course of a year. It's rarely that I come across an OGN that I like enough to nominate for this. So usually I try to focus on just a well-done compilation of older material, something that's been well curated and that provides some additional value besides just regurgitating old comics in their original form. Not that that isn't important, but a little bit of historicization and context is always appreciated. And I've found few compilers and editors of older comic material, particularly oddball older material, that I find appealing than Mr. Craig Yo. And he is the one who brought us Reefer Madness Comics in 2018. Not through his usual Yo Books imprint at IDW, oddly, but this was one that he chose to do through Dark Horse. And it begins with like a 20 pages worth of background on the history of the cultural role of marijuana in the United States, how it came to be outlawed, how those laws developed and were enforced, and how they were then reinforced on the ideological level by propaganda in media such as, of course, comic books. And that's followed up by a good, healthy helping of some truly hilarious and bizarre examples of propagandistic storytelling sampled from the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, the golden and early silver ages of comic books, usually from the secondary or minor publishers. A lot of it is very similar in tone, just bizarrely melodramatic, to the stuff that Craig Yo put in his ongoing anthology Weird Love from IDW. It's just stories of promising young students and prom queens and the like who are led down the road to degradation by that wacky weed. They're often pretty similar in plot structure and in hysterical tone. I mean, the product of the moral panic that was developing in those days, and it was. And then these publishers just kind of trying to play into that, exploit that to help sell some comics. So a lot of them are kind of they bear some similarity to romance or horror comics, but there are actually one or two superhero stories in there, believe it or not, including a Golden Age Doll Man and Doll Girl tale written by legendary Captain Marvel Jr. Scribe Bill Woolfolk.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's an interesting historical artifact, and it does provide the proper context in that introduction by the editor Craig Yo. So, if you're looking for a strange reading experience, I'll pick up a copy of Reefer Madness Comics, and if you dare, read it while high.
What a high concept.
No one uses the phrase wacky weed with more authority than you. Just beautiful to listen to.
As authoritative as someone who's never touched this stuff can possibly be on the subject, Chris.
Hey, comics are our drug, so this just adds to that.
How right you are, Ian. How right you are.
Yes, yes. All right, Invincible Ultimate Collection, Volume 12. I have been one of the biggest proponents of the Invincible series over the years, and this is its final collection. Includes issues 133 to 144, and I am not always I'm not always a large format reader. A lot of the times I like to be able to take something with me that I can fit into a bag really easily and not have it be weighed down. Invincible is one of the few series that I am proud to have all 12 Ultimate Collection hardcovers in my collection because it is deserving of it. The art has been superb all the way throughout. Ryan Ottley has developed such a brilliant style for the book over the years, and it definitely shows here with the final collection as well. So is the original series artist. I believe his name was Neil Walker, if memory serves. But he comes back every now and then for fill-in issues, and it's nice to see the original style coming through again. But yeah, that's it. This is it for now of Invincible's run, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is it. Period. Just because when Kirkman tends to be done with something, he's done with it, unless it's Walking Dead, which will never end. So go out there, do yourself a favor, whether you get it from the library or whether you get it from Comixology or whether you get it in these hardcovers, which are often on sale. Just because you see the cover price of $40, don't buy it for $40. Wait till it's on sale for $20 and buy it that way. But I guarantee you're going to be happy with what you read with Invincible. Just, go ahead and finish out the series with the Invincible Ultimate Collection, and you'll be as happy as I am.
You know, Ian, I'm ashamed to say I've only ever read the first trade of that whole series.
Oh, boy.
And I've heard nothing good things. And so that, in my hopefully, long reading life to come, that's a book I know I have to read.
Oh, yeah.
You are not the first person who has told me it is one of the greatest superhero comics ever conceived. And I'm this just further. I got to get on the horse here and read that series because I've heard nothing good things. I love the first arc that I read years ago. So,
no, you'll absolutely love it. And coming soon as an animated series to Amazon Prime.
Wow,
that is in the works, and they announced the initial voice cast: Stephen Wen, J.K. Simmons, Sandra Oh, Seth Rogen, Gillian Jacobs, Andrew Reynolds, Mark Hamill, and more, and Zazie Beetz. I mean, come on,
come on,
make me want this even more. Why don't you with names like that? So yeah, I can't wait.
All right, so again, Brubaker and Phillips. Depending on your taste, I go on about them on this show ad nauseum or ad infinitum. For me, again, like Greg Rucka, Brian K. Vaughan, there's a handful of writers who just leave everybody else behind, who remind me of what this medium is capable of. And Brubaker and Phillips are the gods of crime noir and comics, as far as I'm concerned. Criminal, Fatale, Sleeper back in Wildstorm. Brubaker did the classic Scene of the Crime story years ago for DC. Incognito, Kill or Be Killed, which I've raved about many times. This is an OGN that is in the universe of Criminal. All the Criminal stories are interconnected. There's a new Criminal comic out now, and this OGN plays into that new volume. It's just about a young girl who has this sort of infatuation with sort of the world of drugs and people use drugs. She's in a rehab clinic, and she hooks up with this young man who's there, and they seem to go off on this road trip / bender, and they're so engrossed with each other. But it's the world of Criminal, so there's a dark side to all of what's happening. I won't spoil that, but again, it's just another master class. And by the way, Sean Phillips' son Jacob Phillips is a hell of an artist in his own right, and he does the coloring on this story. It's beautiful. if you love crime noir and you're not reading Brubaker and Phillips' work, please do yourself a favor. Just get any of the titles I just mentioned. You will not be disappointed. So it's always one – like Murd, I don't get a chance to read a lot of OGNs throughout the year. This one I made a point of picking up because I love the creative team. And once again, they deliver the goods. There's most comics and there's stuff Brubaker and Phillips does. That's what I'll say there.
And Chris, the listeners did agree with you about My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies. It's in this category, again, there wasn't a lot of consensus. There were only two things that got more than one vote. That and one other thing both got exactly 2. So because you have taken care of My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, the listener's nominee then becomes Black Hammer Volume 2, The Event. So that's going on there. And all kinds of other interesting little flotsam got nominated as well. Let's see, the hardcover edition of Green Lantern Earth 1, the original graphic novel by Gabe Hardman and Corinna Bechko. John Byrne's X-Men Artifact Edition. Sea of Love, The Further Adventures of Nick Wilson. The Terrible Elizabeth Dumb Against the Devils in Suits. I don't know what that is, but now I want to. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters 2. Jessica Jones by Kelly Thompson. Berlin. Absolute Sandman Overture. That sounds worthy. Fantastic Four Epic Collection, The Coming of Galactus. Valerian, a little bit of Bédet in there for you. And, and several other things, too. So, yeah, it's a little eclectic in this category. But we have come down to a final list of 4 for the nominees, and those will be My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, Invincible Ultimate Collection Volume 12, Reefer Madness Comics, and Black Hammer Volume 2, The Event.
I want to comment quickly about, because you mentioned Berlin, which ended this past year, and I still have to read the final installments. I've mentioned that book on the air before. It is just an incredible, immersive take on, through various characters, Jason Lutz, on what happens in Weimar Germany in the 30s, the 20s and 30s, and the Nazi rise to power, and how that affects this cast of characters he's created, like a journalist, a female artist, a communist. I mean, the research he's done and how he but it's not like a dry tract on an historical event. You become engrossed in these different characters and how they're affected by these changes sweeping Germany. And it reminds us, the reader, also of how we all know the coming horror of the Third Reich and the Nazi regime, what's going to happen with the war and the Holocaust and so forth. But he takes it back to the ground level, to various people, just human beings, and how they're affected and how they get swept up in things and why they make the choices they do. It's incredible. Highest recommendation.
All right. Okay, so now we're in the home stretch here, folks. It's going to be Creator Awards from here on out to the end. And it begins with the category Best Writer. And my nominee in that category is Gail Simone.
And my nominee is Dan Slott.
My nominee is the King, in this case not the great Kirby King, but what I consider new modern King of scripting, Tom King.
All right. Said. Gail Simone, she's written several things this year, not the highest profile projects necessarily, but things that I found very enjoyable and that remind me of why she's one of my favorite writers. Most notably probably is the Domino ongoing series that she's written for Marvel, which is very fun work in which she imbues an identifiable personality to a character that's been a part of Marvel Comics for a quarter of a century now, but has never had a very clearly defined personality traits. Gail Simone makes you feel a little more clearly who Domino is, besides merely an unusual complexion and a vaguely defined set of luck powers. And she actually goes a little bit further to define those more clearly, too, even to visualize them a little bit. There are neat little captions that pop up whenever she utilizes those powers to show just which circumstances and which probabilities she's manipulating to let things those powers are not entirely under her direct control. They're kind of, in a way, reflexive or autonomic. But but she visualizes them in a clever way. And her knack for characterization is on full display in that series and the several other things she wrote in the course of this year. I really enjoy the camaraderie between Domino and her two supporting cast members, her two main gal pals, her comrades in Agency X. Outlaw, a character Simone created back during the Deadpool/Agent X days. Yeah, Ian, are you up on My Little Pony at all?
No, My Little Pony is one of the few animated series I could never really catch on to. Even though I know plenty of people love it, it just was never my bag.
Well, fair enough. But have you at least seen an episode or two? Do you know the characters?
Yeah. No, I have seen at least like 2 or 3, maybe.
Okay, Outlaw talks exactly like Applejack. Yeah, yeah, she's a Texan. Not only that, she's a direct descendant of the classic Marvel Western hero, the Outlaw Kid. So nod to Marvel history there. Simone is also well known for that, just being able to incorporate a character's history into their current day adventures and their characterization. And rounding out the cast is an old Mark Gruenwald creation, Diamondback, former love interest for Captain America.
Ooh.
So that has been a really fun series. We get to see Domino take on everybody from Gail Simone gets to write characters anyway, from Cable and Colossus all the way down to Morbius the Living Vampire and Longshot, and she writes them all with equal aplomb and great skill. And on top of that, there's the Plastic Man miniseries that I've already extolled. She was also finishing up her creator-owned Crosswind miniseries, which is about a housewife and a hitman who mysteriously switch bodies somehow. So that's an action story with a gender-bent twist to it, which was great fun. There was a Wonder Woman Conan series she wrote this year. There was a Red Sonja Tarzan mashup she did for Dynamite. And let's not forget the Sylvester and Tweety meet Catwoman one-shot for DC. And a really excellent and entertaining bachelorette party story for the Fantastic Four wedding special. You know, the event before the event. Before the Thing and Alicia Masters officially tied the knot, we got to see what Alicia and a bunch of other female members of the Fantastic Four family did to get their rocks off. And Gail Simone was the one who penned that. Yeah, she's just few people do characterization and few people write villains as cleverly as Gail Simone does. And it's just, I thought it would be nice to have just a female creator nominated here, and so she wrote quite a few things I enjoyed this year, and she's got a creative sensibility that is matched and a kind of an acerbic edge to her wit as a writer that are matched by few in the business. And I'm happy that she put together enough published works this year to really qualify for being nominated in my eyes for this category. So I'm happy to make Gail Simone my nominee.
I'm glad to hear Diamondback's getting some play. I always liked that character, so that's great.
Yep, and Simone once again uses her as more than just a purple costume and some throwing gems. You know, she has character traits beyond just what she looks like.
Well, I loved her Deadpool and her Agent X back in the day. And that was my first real exposure to her, and she's grown leaps and bounds over the years, and I'm happy to see that she's playing at least a little bit with her previous wheelhouse when doing Marvel stuff, but at the same time, she's just turning out excellent stuff every single year, no question about it.
Yep, totally agree.
Yep. All right, Dan Slott. I'll make this nice and simple. He's Dan Slott.
True.
I don't think I've ever actually disliked a Dan Slott comic. Like I'm going to go out there on a limb and say it. Like even going back to his Avengers: The Initiative days, and before then, like Great Lakes Avengers was amazing back in the day, and She-Hulk was outstanding.
Oh, She-Hulk was phenomenal.
Oh my God, yes. And his Thing series, which a lot of people forgot.
Which I have not read yet. You told me how good it is. I got to pick that up.
It's superb. In fact, the rabbi that marries Ben and Alicia is the same rabbi that performed his bar mitzvah in the Dan Slott series.
Continuity.
Yep. So that I was happy to see him come back, and he brings the Yancey Street in beautifully as well. But yeah, he finished off his amazing Spider-Man run this year, earlier this year in 2018. And then he started off Iron Man. I've only read like 1 or 2 issues of that, but I've really enjoyed it. And Fantastic Four is back, and it's great.
Yes.
And that's really all you need to do to get me to vote you as best writer is write a good Fantastic Four. And he is doing that in spades. It feels like each of the characters is what they're supposed to be, and yet at the same time it still has that trademark Dan Slott wit going for it, which is perfect for the Fantastic Four. The fact that he hasn't written them until now outside of the Thing series is amazing to me, and yet here he is. So good for you, Dan. If you write it, I will read it.
And what I love about Slott and all the work I've of his that I've read, and I haven't read as much of you, Ian, but I've read a good cross section, is the love he has for the characters and their history.
Yes,
shines through in everything he does. And let me tell you, as a reader and as someone who so reverently loves the history of a lot of these characters, that means so much to me. And I second everything you said there.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the Silver Surfer series also was still one of the best damn things he's ever written.
In fact, I have right here on my desk the complete omnibus of that series. Because even though I read it as it came out, I have to own it for my shelf.
Very cool.
Have you read his Tony Stark Iron Man series, Ian?
I started it. I read the first 2 issues of it, and it's so far so good. It's not his first time writing Tony, so it's not like he's entirely new to it. But he takes the basic concept of I can use as many armors as I need to and runs with it. He's not one of those writers that sticks Tony with one specific look throughout, which I'm appreciating. And he might be leaning a little bit more towards a secret agent angle with Tony as well.
That facet of Stark has always been fun.
Exactly.
The secret agent angle.
Same here, definitely. So I'll have to read more to give you more of a report, but I'm enjoying what I'm reading so far.
All right. El King. So, again, like with Ian, I don't need to go really too much into depth here because we've talked about Tom so much on the air. When it comes to scripting in comics today, like I mentioned Rucka, I mentioned Brubaker, I mentioned Vaughn, which to me is like the trifecta of the masters in comic book scripting right now. For me, he belongs in that same elite pantheon. His work on Mr. Miracle, I mean, again, he took a character, did the same thing with the Vision. He took a character that has an established history, a love character, but not like a character that's often in the forefront of things. And he just what Tom King does so well is he realizes just the innate greatness in a concept. And he brings all of that out and things that you never thought you would see that character do. He realizes all of that. And when that Mr. Miracle series, I mean, again, it's a series. He goes into Apocalypse, New Genesis, the war, all of that, but it's also about family and raising a child and what that entails when you're also like these superheroic beings are involved in a cosmic conflict, against this horrific regime that's run by Darkseid. And it just floored me. I mean, I'm just in awe of what Tom just seems to be able to do with every property he touches. And again, I'm not doing Mr. Miracle justice. You have to read it. I mean, there's so much going on in that miniseries, and he so realizes just the full potential of that character right from the Kirby roots forward. But ultimately, it's also a story about a relationship between him and Big Barda and their family, and that's what makes it so fun. Plus, Funky Flashman appears. You can never go wrong with that. And of course, what he's doing with Batman. And I got to tell you, gentlemen, I've read a lot of Batman in my life. Not as much as Shane, but I mean, I'm well versed in the character and his history. I haven't been this excited to read Batman comics, and I can't tell you when. And we've talked. I'm not going to go into length because we've talked about this so much already over the past months and years. But consistently, hands down, month after month, the most exciting superhero comic on the stands today is Batman by Tom King. And Ian, the story you mentioned where he goes to where he's on the jury for Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I finished that story, I was just like, God, I believe in comics. Like, like there are moments where like, oh, this is getting kind of flat. It's the same stuff over and over again. I'm getting disillusioned with the big two. But again, when they have the right creative team and they let them go to work and they let them carry through with their vision, you're getting stuff for the ages. And that's why, even though I was disappointed with he didn't marry Catwoman, it's okay because I trust Tom has a vision and that he knows where this is going. And I'm confident it's all going to, in the end, we're going to look back and go, this is one of the greatest sort of epochs in the history of the Batman character. So Tom King is my choice.
And he is absolutely the listener's choice as well, Chris. Yes, this is the biggest runaway in the entire voting process. Tom King got more votes than anything on the slate for any category. But the runner-up with an impressive number of votes as well is Jason Aaron. Yep. So he finds his way onto the ballot as well as the listener's choice. And second runner-up was Ed Brubaker.
Well, I mean, quick comment about Aaron. I mean, he's a writer who also everything he touches, I have loved. Everything. And that's no hyperbole. Everything he's written, that guy, I have loved it. The Other Side, the Vietnam story. Of course, Scalp, which is his great Vertigo masterpiece. The Goddamn miniseries he did for Image. Of course, all his work on Thor. I mean, he's going to go down as one of the all-time great Thor scribes. Like, he's been on the book now for several years. I mean, the whole storyline he's done with Thor and Jane. I mean, definitely Jason Aaron deserves to be up there. Absolutely.
All right. So your choices for Best Writer will be Tom King, Dan Slott, Gail Simone, and Jason Aaron. So from Best Writer, we move right on to Best Artist, accelerating things a little bit here because we're starting to run out of time. But Best Artist of the Year, Chris, it's your turn to go first, so lay it on us.
Thanks, brother. I'm going to go back to the Lazarus domain and the Fracture storyline. My selection is the great Michael Lark.
Mine is Joe Bennett.
Oh, terrific artist.
And mine will be Ed McGuinness.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I've praised Michael Lark many times over the years. I mean, go to Gotham Central, which is, one of the all-time great sort of finite DC series. Few people draw Batman villains better, I think, than Michael Lark. Again, his work with Rucka on Lazarus to me is just the consummate work of his career. And within that, the work he did on this 2-part Fracture storyline just simply takes my breath away. I just think this guy's in a class by himself. I mean, I just watching his work from go back to the Legends of the Hawkman story he did years back through what you see here. This is someone who is really at the top of their craft. And the way he's captured the world of Lazarus, this dystopian, corporate-dominated future, and capturing the epic events. No one draws combat scenes better of hand-to-hand combat, I think, right now. But also just in this 2-part story, it's just about a man trying to rediscover himself through this family he's found, and it is just breathtaking. The way he draws the fishing boats and the birds and fishing at dusk and dawn and love scenes. It's all so human and it's real. I mean, this is God. He's a master. Yeah, that's my selection. With it wasn't even a consideration. Right away, that was my choice.
Good choice.
Thanks, honey.
You're welcome. So Joe Bennett for me, just because his work on Hulk has been stunning, and I haven't been this menaced by the visage of the Hulk in years, and it doesn't even make him look overly tall or overly, muscular. He just has a look on his face like I could kill you at any moment.
God, Ian, I can't wait to read this book, man.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make that a top priority to hunt down when I go to Emerald City Con next month.
It's a good choice. It is definitely a good choice to make. Yeah, I I love everything about what he's doing there, and I need more of it. And I hope he continues to be the artist on it because his style is just made for the Hulk. He's actually almost Mike McCone-esque on what he's drawing here. At least facial wise, and yes, one of my favorite artists as well. So I was bound to love it just even saying those words, and yeah, he completely blew it out of the park. It's excellent, and that's why he gets my honor.
Marvelous. All right. Ed McGuinness comes to us as the artist for Avengers. It's pretty much the only project he was working on this year, but that's good enough. I mean, Ed McGuinness's artwork is pure superhero adrenaline.
Absolutely.
It's big, it's splashy, it's blocky, it's epic in scope. The characters he draws are like the platonic ideals of the biggest, coolest, best articulated superhero action figures you've ever dreamed of owning.
Well put, Murd.
And it's just great fun to see how he animates these larger than life characters in larger than life visual terms, and to see and just so my excitement at seeing him back on a monthly book. That's a high profile assignment, and just the ideal marriage of artistic talent and project. The Avengers is giving him the best chance he has to be the kind of artist that he is. And so that excitement that I feel at seeing his superhero work again has propelled his name into my slot on the nominees list. Good old EMC squared.
And he was also, and again, a thrill to see him draw the Celestials.
Right, and they look fantastic as he draws them, larger than life.
But what about Galactus?
What indeed. All right, and the listeners proving consistent. They're continuing the Mr. Miracle admiration here, and they have nominated Mitch Gerrits, artist
Great
of
choice.
Mr. Miracle Maxi Series, as their choice. Runner-up, Clay Mann of Heroes in Crisis.
Ooh, well, that's another great choice. Man, good. The listeners have wonderful taste.
Oh yeah, they're on the ball this year, no doubt about it.
Really.
I've always enjoyed the name Clay Mann because he sounds like Art himself.
I just think Clay Mann and the Masters of the Universe. That's where my head's at.
Nice.
All right, so your nominees for Best Artist of 2018, Michael Lark, Joe Bennett, Ed McGuinness, and Mitch Gerrits. All right, now we move on to Best Writer/Artist, a single individual who performs both creative functions in the creation of a comic. All right, Ian, you have the floor.
All right, I'm going CGS friend of the family here and going Katie Cook.
Oh, excellent. Wow, it's been a long time since she's been nominated. I am going to invoke the secret sacred name of Pug Grumble. The meaning of this will become clear in a moment.
All right. Wow. Okay. For me, it's, again, like with Lark, it's not a moment's hesitation. It's Terry Moore.
Boom.
All right. So the reason that I throw Katie out there, I don't really follow a lot of writer artists outside of the webcomic world, and when I think of Katie and what she's been doing with her webcomic Nothing Special, I felt that she deserved my appreciation. Her artwork is always so joyful and fun, even when she's drawing something, outlandish and crazy and sometimes even evil. It all comes off as lighthearted in the end because that's just what she does. And the characters that she's crafted inside of Nothing Special are working for me. I need to catch up a little bit more on what season 2 has been doing. But it's a very magical series, and they have a talking radish friend, and really that's kind of all you need, Like you're gonna throw in a really cute mascot character that's a talking radish that's like straight out of an anime or a manga, and you're immediately gonna sell me. And Katie has done that, and that is why she is my writer artist for this year.
Yep. Proving once again the old adage that talking produce enhances any franchise it touches.
Yes.
Katie has the wisdom to realize this.
She does.
Right. Now, what my much less well-known nominee has in common with yours, Ian, is that he too is kind of an extended friend of the CGS family, and he too is working on or has worked on a project that is all ages and family friendly. Pug Grumble is the pseudonym used by the deliberately anonymous creator, or writer and artist, of course, of the ongoing, the recently concluded 7-issue miniseries Farlan the Goblin. This is something that I've been talking up every time it appears.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned this many times over the years, Murd.
Oh, yes, and deserved, and rightly so. I mean, this is something that Jamie and I discovered. Now that tells you how long this series has been going on. We met the creator, who will continue to be anonymous. So he and I never really did learn what his real name was, only that his first initial was the letter J. So Jamie D and I met him at a New York Comic-Con a few years ago, had a nice long talk with him about his creative philosophy and his approach to self-publishing. And we were both impressed by his dedication to his craft. Because this is a person who doesn't just set out to make comics and love making comics, although he does both of those things. He made sacrifices to be able to bring his pet project, Farlan the Goblin, to the people. I mean, he had to go on a couple of sabbaticals from work. I think he might actually have temporarily resigned from his day job for a while just to be able to continue to make Farlan the Goblin. Which is, I've talked about the work itself on the show a few times. It's the story of a little tree sprite, like a guardian spirit who specializes in forestry, who's traveling throughout the many and diverse odd lands of Wug, each of which is this quirkily enchanted themed environment with its own little magical hook. Like he's been through the race lands where everything is done by competing in races, the wing lands where everything flies, the beard lands where everything grows beards, etc., etc., etc. There's an unending variety of these strange and esoteric realms that this little tree goblin has wandered through to try and find a home of his own, bringing with him his little supporting cast of Drowsy, he's got a little mechanical man called a Tink, who has a mustache. He reminds me of Tick-Tock of Oz, and so that endears me to the character right there. And his trusty sidekick, Aaron Wart the Shrub, who is a shrub. Who is Farlan's closest confidant. The stories that he produces about Farlan over the course of the 7-issue run of Farlan are just bursting with imagination. I mean, they're well structured, they're well thought out. It's just a great deal of fun, the adventures that Farlan has. Each land has its own little special rules, which are planned out immaculately, like a great game designer would, by the man known only as Pug Grumble. And so I love his creation, and I also respect his dedication to craft. And I hold him up not only as an excellent writer-artist of all ages comics, but also as a paragon of what a self-publisher can be. He just kind of hiked himself up by his own bootstraps and created this thing and put it out there. Didn't even want to put his own name on it because he wanted the work to speak for itself. That kind of integrity I absolutely respect, and it's very rare in any frame of the comics scene these days, on any platform of comics creation. He finally put out the final 2 issues of his opus, Farlan the Goblin, in 2018. I thought this was time to bring him forth to take his final bow on the CGS stage. Bravo to you, Pug Grumble J, whatever name you choose to call yourself. You're a okay guy, a great creator, and self-publisher in my book. And so here you are. There is your final accolade. Until, of course, your next work comes out. He's already working, apparently, on a prose novel and another comics project that does not involve Farlan to come on the other side of that. So look forward to seeing all of those. And here you are, finally. He actually came to the CGS Facebook page and posted something to the effect of, "Oh, too bad there's no all ages category." And, the Academy has heard you, Pug Grumble, and you don't need no all ages category. You're a fine comics creator for whatever age audience. And so I toast you here.
A shrubbery?
Murray, that was a magnificent testimonial.
Thank you, Chris. It was deserved by its recipient.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think I need to say much here. I mean, it's Terry Moore. I don't think the term living master is overstated when we talk about this creator. Strangers in Paradise, Rachel Rising, Echo, Motor Girl. He's now doing Strangers in Paradise again. He's returned to the characters after the 25th anniversary. This is a creator who can basically do it all. Any genre, because he's basically done pretty much every genre now. Really, I don't think there's anyone who can capture just expression and emotion in his renderings the way he does. And whose sense of humor, his sense of drama, his sense of horror, of violence. I mean, basically anything you imagine a living master can do without peer, Terry Moore does it. And the fact that I put him in here because Strangers in Paradise is running again this past year. And if Jamie D, I know, is smiling right now because he revered this man's work. He always trumpeted it on the air.
Yes, he did.
Without question, one of the greatest creators in any era in the comic book medium. That's my choice.
Hear, hear.
And the listeners' choice will be Jeff Lemire.
Ooh, wonderful.
Another worthy of worthies. Terry Moore was their second choice, with other significant votes going to Tilly Walden and Joelle Jones.
Nice.
Right. So your slate for best writer/artist are Terry Moore, Katie Cook, Pug Grumble, and Jeff Lemire. All right, we're coming on hot to the end here, folks. 3 more awards, categories to go. Best color artist is next. And my nominee here will be Tomeo Mori.
Go ahead, Ian.
All right, my nominee is Paul Mounts.
My nominee, and I apologize if I mispronounce this name, is Santi Arcus.
All right, not a name I recognize. Let's see. Color artist for me, I had a few different possibilities here. I thought about Mitch Gerrits for his color over his own pencils in Mr. Miracle. Jordi Belair was certainly a possibility. Chris O'Halloran, who colored not only Ice Cream Man, but the New Exile series. Rachel Rosenberg, who colored Peter Parker, Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. But I went with Tomeu Mori because he colored a few different things this year, including Deathstroke. Christopher Priest's run on Deathstroke is starting to really interest me right now because of the Deathstroke Arkham arc that's going on.
Yes.
But the main reasons I put down Mr. Mori's name as my nominee for colorist of the year is because he is the one who applied those gorgeous golden sunset hues over Clayman's pencils in the Heroes in Crisis miniseries that DC is doing right now. Really helped provide the visual texture that story is looking for. And also, he's done color for several issues of the epic and very literary Batman run of Tom King. It's basically a 100-issue long novel of Batman and his world. And he, in particular, colored Batman number 54, which is a self-contained little standalone story about Batman and his relationship with Dick Grayson, which includes a confrontation with that cruel chromatist of crime, Crazy Quilt. And whenever he appears, color is key. So, on the strength of that and Heroes in Crisis, Tomeo Mori, I salute you.
The alliteration there could not have been better if you tried.
No one does it better than Mert.
And I did.
Yeah. All right, Paul Mounts. Again,
yes.
This is going to be quick. He's been doing the color on Joe Bennett's work for the Immortal Hulk. He's also been in the business for like hundreds of years. I feel like he seriously he's been working for Marvel for forever and ever and ever. He has the longest streak to this day of working on the Fantastic Four. Because I know he was the colorist on that for many, many years. I think as early as the 80s, and until I think possibly the end of Eaglesham's run with Hickman. He was doing the colors on that, and now here he is with the Hulk, and he is along with Joe Bennett. If I was going to say Joe Bennett for best artist, I was going to have to say Paul Mounts for best color artist because that combination makes that book sing. And it very much is the work of a master colorist like Paul Mounts that makes that happen. So he's there.
All right. I have to admit, I don't know. I've never seen this colorist work before. They appeared on Lazarus, the Fracture. Again, we're going back to this Fracture storyline. And I misspoke before. The story doesn't actually take place in Norway. It takes place in what was the country of Denmark. But, same region, Scandinavia. But the coloring job on these two issues is some of the best coloring I've seen in comics in recent years. Everything from the way he captures tones in the sky, whether it's dusk or dawn, the hues of the fishing vessels, people's hair, the uniforms of the corporate overlords in this particular region, the skyline, the seagulls, and the last couple of pages, which all take place, it looks like at dusk, are just some of the most breathtaking coloring I've ever seen in a comic. So, Santi Arcus, I want to see more of your work. But that's and I don't know the names. I don't know if this could be a man or a woman. Forgive me, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the background of the name.
I think it's a male. Santi is short for Santiago.
Okay, thank you, Mert. Thank you for edifying there. But just people, just read Lazarus. You're going to get a class in how comics should be done. That's my choice.
A good and well-reasoned one it is. The listeners, for their part, have chosen Matt Wilson, whose work has been seen in Paper Girls and
Fine choice.
Plus the Divine. With runners-up being Jordi Belair, Dave Stewart, Elizabeth Breitweiser, and Laura Allred.
Breitweiser's great, and so is Allred. All great choices.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Just put her together with Brubaker and Phillips. It's a team supreme. So the nominees then for Best Color Artist will be Santiago Arcus, Paul Mounts, Tomeu Mori, and Matt Wilson. Now the penultimate category. Yes, the much underappreciated Best Letterer category. Let's see. Okay, Chris, I think it's your turn now.
And I do have a choice. I thought I didn't, but I do. I'm going to be a broken record. I'm going back to these Lazarus issues again. Simon Bowland is my choice for Best Letterer.
And I am going to go with Russ Wooten.
All right, excellent. And since Simon Bowland was going to be my choice, I think
I'm sorry.
I shall default. Second choice, Carlos Mangual.
Mert, I apologize for the expropriation of that.
No, that's quite all right, Chris. First come, first served.
Well, I was struggling initially, as I was telling Mert off the air, about the selection for this category. But as I was going through this issue again, all right, the guy letters in multiple languages, and he also basically has a technique where, because the characters are speaking in Danish, and then he condenses the lettering in a smaller font to translate it for the reader into English, while still making it very clear that the characters are speaking in a foreign language. So not only is the design of the lettering is just magnificent, because in lesser hands this could come off and it'd be very clumsy. But the way he lays it out, you know right away what language they're actually speaking and what you're supposed to read as the translation. So beautiful work.
Yep, he provided the letters for quite a few things that I've been reading and enjoying this year. You'll appreciate this, Chris. He also lettered James Bond Origin for Dynamite.
Oh, so good.
Also at Dynamite, he did the Project Superpowers miniseries, Shadow Man for Valiant, Warren Ellis's The Wild Storm at DC, the current Sandman and Dreaming things that Vertigo's been putting out, and at least one issue of the Future Quest anthology that just came to a close this past year.
All right, so I went with Russ Wooten. He's been the letterer of Walking Dead for hundreds of issues. So it's hard for me to not include him, just for the fact that for a book with like Walking Dead that's entirely black and white, the words are that much more important. And he's always been incredibly consistent. So I went ahead and decided to go with him there. And he continues to be the Walking Dead letterer today. And he also lettered a bunch of Invincible. In fact, most of it, if not all of it. So he's good buddies with Kirkman and does good work on his stuff. So there we go.
Mm-hmm. And for my part, Mungwal is kind of a last-minute substitution for me, but he did the lettering on the Nightwing series, and more importantly for me, he, too, like Simon Bowland, provided lettering for a couple issues of the Future Quest Presents anthology series, which completed its run in 2018. So his far-flung fantasy fonts graced that series for a couple of issues. So it's kind of a way of getting that series mentioned in the nominees. So I went with that. And the listeners, they actually got themselves into another three-way tie for Best Letterer. So their three nominees will be Joe Caramagna, Clayton Cowles, and the evergreen Todd Klein.
Ah, yes.
So those are your nominees for Best Letterer in Comics in 2018. Simon Bowland, Russ Wooten, Carlos Mangual, Joe Caramagna, Clayton Cowles, and Todd Klein. And now, the final category for the breakthrough talent of 2018. A writer, artist, etc., who came up through the ranks and really made his or her mark on the medium and brought his or her career to a new level in the eyes of those of you doing the nominating here in the course of the year that has just concluded. And Ian, it is your turn to nominate first. Fingers crossed that you're not going to take my choice.
I don't think I'm going to, because this one literally came under the wire as this comic was released in December. Stephanie Hans.
All right, good. Mine is Saladin Ahmed is my choice.
Excellent choice.
Mine is Chip Zdarsky.
Nice.
All right.
So Stephanie Hans is an artist, and she's been around for a while, mostly doing image stuff, but occasionally some things for Marvel. But I believe she did Journey into Mystery for a while with Marvel. But here she is working on the series Die, which just came out in December of 2018, so it just barely qualifies for this. But looking at her art on this series, there's no way in hell we are not going to see more of her in the future, because there's something so striking about her choice of her choice of color and the character models that she's working with in Die, that I need to see more of this. I'm already thinking in my head like series that she could probably do an excellent job on. I think she'd do a damn good Doctor Strange for Marvel, and I think that pretty much anything that she does over at Vertigo is going to wind up working with this general style. So for her realism and her palette and the story she's able to tell with minimal images that still get the point across, I definitely want to see more out of Stephanie Hans come 2019.
All right. That is a name I will make it a point to look for in the future.
Indeed.
And the series was Die, you said?
Yes. It's Kieran Gillen's new series. I'd mentioned it in passing on a preview somewhat recently. That's the Die is a pitch black fantasy where a group of 40-something adults have to deal with the returning unearthly horror they barely survived as teenage role players.
Right. All right, and since the first issue of that came out just a couple of months ago, it's probably still on back issue shelves at your local comic shop. So
yes, it is.
I will see if Golden Eagle has any when I go there tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
All right. As for my choice, Saladin Ahmed, he is a writer that broke through at Marvel with a Black Bolt miniseries that concluded near the very beginning of 2018. And that self-same month, Saladin just jumped right over to his next assignment, which was writing The Exiles. And that's the reason why I kind of was expecting, just kind of cringing, expecting you, Ian, to jump on him as your choice for breakthrough talent, because I know that you and I are both fans of the Exiles concept.
I had a feeling it would be you, so that's why I left it to you.
I appreciate that, Ian. All right, so he wrote that series and wrote it well, and he's already on to other pastures because he's going to be writing the ongoing adventures of Kamala Khan. I think his first issue on that series is seen print. Am I right, Ian?
It was solicited most recently, actually, so it's still a month or two away. So it's coming pretty soon.
But it is coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So so there he's made the transition from prose fiction, and he's writing some fairly high profile stuff for Marvel, and so he's an excellent choice to continue chronicling the Jersey City adventures of Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. So he's my choice as a breakthrough talent for this year.
Okay, so Chip Zdarsky, I'm acknowledging here as a breakthrough writer because we already know his art talents from Sex Criminals, right? But I didn't realize what a great scribe this gentleman is, and his work on Marvel 2-in-1, which I've been raving about. I mean, Ian and I were talking about how much we missed the Fantastic Four, but Zdarsky's work softened the blow because in chronicling the adventures of Johnny and Ben while Reed and Sue and the kids are off missing in the multiverse, he captured the spirit of the team with just those two characters and their relationship. One of the Marvel's best titles, hands down. And I haven't read these yet, but I've been reading rave reviews of his work on Spectacular Spider-Man. And apparently he did an annual, which is getting great laurels. And the fact that he has that big Spider-Man miniseries coming out, which we've been talking about, Lifetime, I believe it's called, where he's going to chronicle Spider-Man actually aging through the decades. This gentleman is one of the best writers Marvel has right now. And I'm so excited to see what he's going to do in the future. But Chip Zdarsky, Scribe, my breakthrough talent.
They just released the image of what issue 3 of Life Story looks like, and oh yeah, you're gonna love this.
How 80s is it, Ian? How 80s is it?
It is so 80s that it has USSR bombs coming down and black costume Spider-Man in a coffin.
Oh,
that is
God.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Well, the listeners, proving once again that there's no flies on them, have picked up on the same vibes you have, Chris, and they, too, have chosen Chip Zdarsky as their number one breakthrough talent of the year.
Nice.
And we've got ourselves yet another three-way tie in the wake of Chip Zdarsky. Receiving the same number of votes as runner-up, we have Donny Cates, Kelly Thompson, and Joelle Jones.
All fine choices.
Yep, and all three of them going on the ballot. So there you are. The lineup for the last of the 16 categories for the CGS Best of 2018 Awards. For Breakthrough Talent of 2018, your nominees are Chip Zdarsky, Stephanie Hans, Saladin Ahmed, Donny Cates, Kelly Thompson, and Joelle Jones.
Woo!
And that, as they
All
say,
right.
is that.
And Moonlight. Don't forget Moonlight. Oh, wait, sorry. The wrong award show. My bad.
Oh, my God. Ian, it's like you're doing your own riff now on pants. It's incredible. Holy mackerel.
You know, people were talking about how I'm a good person to fill in for them, so I'm just embracing it full hold.
Yes. Do please take it as a compliment it was meant to be.
Oh, yeah.
I am. All right, gentlemen. Job well done.
Yep, I believe our collective awards show bolt has been shut, but the excitement is not over yet, folks, because now the next and final stage of the awards process is upon us. You can go back to the comicforums.vanillacommunity.com sometime in the next day or two. It won't be there immediately after the release of this episode. Got to leave a little bit of time for people to listen to the show and not have the surprise be ruined by going to the forums. Go to that website, look for the thread on the On Topics forum, where you will see a complete listing of the ballot, all the different categories and all the different nominees. You can then email your final votes for one nominee in each category to bestof@comicgeekspeak. Bestof@comicgeekspeak. Shit. Yes, bestof@comicgeekspeak.com.
All
I
right.
do believe that is the actual address. And I haven't come up with a specific deadline for that voting, but that will be available at that same place within the next day or two. So go look, make your decisions, email your votes in, vote early and vote singly. One ballot per customer.
No dead people are allowed to vote in this election.
No, and if you just change one letter in your name, we're gonna know.
I will be checking IP addresses because I totally know how to do that.
All right, Murd, you ready to send us out?
I will be just as soon as I bring up our website. Okay, here we go. If you'd like to send us an email, that address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to send us a voicemail, you can call 267-702-6642. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @comicgeekspeak. You can go to thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com, not only to learn the complete ballot of nominees for these awards, but also to talk back on this episode, to leave feedback on a variety of other episodes of our podcast, and to engage in conversations with your fellow CGS listeners and whatever other nerds happen to be hanging around, including the three of us. We'd like to thank everyone who has donated monetarily to the show in the past. We really appreciate it. The show would not be what it is today without your help. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Played it off with the music.